The newest Pokemon TCG set, Paradox Rift, has had a ton of hype surrounding it, with potentially game-breaking cards like Iron Hand ZX and Technical Machine De-Evolution, which the Doomsayers prophesied as the end of evolution decks in the standard format. In addition to these individual cards that could be included into a multitude of different archetypes, Paradox Rift also brought Iron Valiant EX and Roaring Moon EX, two very different cards that are incredibly aggressive in their own rights. Iron Valiant EX with the Tachyon Bits ability, which can knock out your opponent's smaller Pokemon potentially before they even get to take a turn. But more importantly than the cheap turn 1 wins is its combo with Medicham V's Yoga Loop attack to damage a Pokemon right up to the point of being KO'd and then finish it off with Yoga Loop to take an entire extra turn. Roaring Moon EX, on the other hand, doesn't mess around with small amounts of damage, as its Calamity Storm attack can do a maximum of 220 damage, and its Frenzied Gouging attack straight up KOs anything in its path. With so much aggression and nuanced tech entering the standard format with this new set, what would be the perfect play for a huge tournament? As I wouldn't be attending the Latin American International Championships, but still desperately wanted to compete in this fresh and exciting format, I registered for 2 online events that both looked to be pretty large in player size and community prestige: the Late Night 150 and the Tournament of Doom Online Regionals. I decided that there were 3 archetypes well positioned to win events in the early days of the Paradox Rift format, so I started there. The first of these 3 was Fusion Strike Mew VMAX. You might be confused with Mew VMAX being one of my top picks due to the new Roaring Moon EX deck being very popular, but not to worry. Mew VMAX has dealt with plenty of Dark-type Pokemon, and if we learned anything the past couple of years, it should be to never count Mew VMAX out. Between the turn 1 attack potential of Meloetta with Alessa Sparkle, the powerful combination of Judge plus Path to the peak, and the insane amount of draw power Genesect V provides, this is still an incredible deck. However, I decided I wanted to play something a little more tactical that would allow me to play a slower game, which brings me to my second option, Charizard EX. Charizard EX hasn't always been a slow and tactical deck, but the new Technical Machine Evolution has inspired a brand new build for the Charizard EX archetype. Using this TM evolution, the Charizard player is now able to keep their board full of single prize Pokemon such as Charmander, Charmeleon, Bidoof, Bibarel, and support Pokemon like Mew and Manaphy. And then after your opponent takes the first knockout, you can slam down Charizard EX and begin sweeping through the board with your 330 HP fire monster lizard dragon thing that, by the way, is dark type and can't be damaged on the bench because of crystals or something. I would have ended up playing Charizard EX had it not been for an old faithful archetype that I just happened to crack the deck list for. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content, and visit my sponsors and affiliates linked down below in the description. Use my coupon codes at PokeCollect.com for a wide selection of sealed products, pre-orders for new releases, and unique mystery box items. PoTownStore.com when shopping for Pokemon TCG Live code cards. Dragon Shield sleeves, my favorite card sleeves to use, and Into the AM apparel for comfortable and passionate clothing. If you have Pokemon TCG bulk lying around, start selling it now with ease at tcgbulk.com. And don't forget to stop by PokemonCard.io for deck building, community forums, and news articles. You can find free and premium articles and videos for competitive Pokemon TCG at Metafy, and you directly support me if you become a Metafy member. Information for Pokemon TCG coaching and gameplay reviews can also be found at my Metafy link in the description. I present to you Gardevoir EX with no Battle VIP Pass. That's right. One of the most staple item cards in the game would be completely excluded from my Gardevoir EX deck list. This was not just to challenge myself and play Gardy without a staple card, or simply because of my distaste for cards that are only usable for the first turn of the game. I promise there was plenty of logic that went into this decision. You see, Gardevoir EX can have 2 game plans for its early game setup. Either rare candy a Gardevoir EX down on turn 2 and begin attacking, or use Mirage Step to essentially cheat multiple Curlia straight from the deck onto the bench. I typically don't enjoy playing decks that need to rare candy a stage 2 on turn 2 of the game, because it creates a very volatile experience where the deck either works or doesn't work, with very little in between. So I decided to strongly lean into the Mirage Step Kirlia for several reasons. The most important reason being that Mirage Step Kirlia is insanely efficient if you go first, since you can use it on turn 2, and a lot of decks won't take their first knockout until after you've already used the Mirage Step. Counting on a plan that needs to win the coin flip and go first can definitely be a bit shaky, but with new decks like Roaring Moon EX wanting to go second, and the new build of Charizard EX choosing second to use TM Evolution, I would get to go first even when losing the coin flip against some of these decks. While theorizing this, I realized that my ideal turn 1 board would really just need a couple of Ralts and maybe a Manaphy against decks with bench sniping available. This could easily be achieved without Battle VIP Pass, and in theory, the Battle VIP Passes could be replaced with cards that are useful all game long, like Ultra Ball, Fog Crystal, and Artisan. So with a very low maintenance early game setup for this Gardevoir EX build, I could enhance the middle to late game consistency and overall power level of the deck by adding a third Shining Arcana Gardevoir and new cards like Screamtail and Luxurious Cape. Screamtail puts out a very efficient amount of damage, essentially dealing 40 damage for each instance of Psychic Embrace used to attach a Psychic Energy to Screamtail. With 4 Psychic Embraces used to attach to Screamtail, Roaring Scream can snipe 160 damage anywhere on the board. And with the new Luxurious Cape attached, Screamtail can have up to 18 damage counters on it, meaning Roaring Scream can deal up to 360 damage anywhere on the board. This combination of cards struck me as too good to be true, and I had to see for myself if it really worked this well in a tournament setting. Not to mention, Luxurious Cape can also be attached to Shining Arcana Gardevoir to raise the ceiling of how many times you can attach to it with Psychic Embrace, turning it into a one-hit knockout machine. My plan was to focus on a largely single prize strategy, attacking with Shining Arcana Guardy, Screamtail, and Cresselia. The strategy was mostly theory at this point, so I left Zacian V in the deck just in case it was still needed, and I entered the late night 150 event. So I'm going first here, and I start Radiant Greninja with energy in my hand, so I could have concealed cards as my only chance of getting Ralts, but I was also lucky enough to top deck Ultra Ball, so I can go ahead and use this Ultra Ball to guarantee myself a Ralts, but this is still not a very good setup. I also want to make sure that I have enough energy in my hand so that I can attach to the active Radiant Greninja, retreat it next turn, and attach to the Ralts for Mirage Step, and have that third energy left over to concealed cards. So it was a super important decision there that I did not discard any energy with the Ultra Ball, and instead I made the identification of Screamtail and Shining Arcana Guardy not being the most important resources right there, especially since I play 3 Shining Arcana Guardy and I have 2 Super Rods in the deck. So we do find the level ball, and so because of that, I probably will skip using Mirage Step. I'm sorry, I will skip using concealed cards. Because I don't want to draw into any of the Refinement Kirlias, which I have 2 of in the deck and I have 1 prized. So I skipped using the concealed cards because if I draw into a Refinement Kirlia there, that's 1 less Refinement Kirlia that I can put on the board with the Mirage Step. So definitely important to be patient and conserve your resources and really think through every small decision with this deck. Because I could have definitely messed up my setup there. It's not a perfect setup since I did prize a Refinement Kirlia. I didn't get any additional Ralts on the board. But I feel pretty good that I was able to get out of that shaky opening hand and Mirage Step for at least 2 Kirlias. So now I have 3 Kirlias on the board. 2 of them can draw me cards, and I also have the Radiant Greninja down that can draw cards for me. The opponent is going to just go turn 2 Rare Candy into the Charizard EX. It looks like they have also a pretty weird setup, but they are going to just start going through my board here with this Charizard EX. So I'll have to try to deal with this pretty soon before they take too much of a lead, but I already am expecting to go behind on prizes when playing Gardevoir, so it's nothing that my deck isn't prepared for already. I'm at Curlies, so that's really good. Hopefully I can at least soften up this Charizard EX. I highly doubt that I would ever be able to get a one-hit knockout on it with my current hand and my current board state, but it would be really great to at least get some damage in, maybe with a reversal energy to attach to a Shining Arcana Guardy. So there's Ultra Ball, so I can find the Shining Arcana Guardy with that. And I already have 5 energy in the discard, so if I was able to find Shining Arcana Gardevoir and Gardevoir EX, I could attach Luxurious Cape to my Shining Arcana Gardevoir and maybe even be able to get the KO here if I can muster up enough basic Psychic energies with the Psychic Embrace. So Refinement finds me a Zinnia's Resolve, which is an unfortunate supporter to draw into here since it would only draw me 2 cards and I have to discard 2 energy, or I have to discard 2 cards from my hand, which I think will just end up being energies here. Deciding if the Zinnia's Resolve is correct, if I should Fog Crystal first. So I am going to Fog Crystal for a Ralts because I'm trying to draw into Gardevoirs. I don't want to draw into that Ralts with the Zinnias. And then I'm deciding here, is it better to just Ultra Ball away cards and get Shining Arcana and then Zinnias? Or should I Zinnias first and see if I get the Shining Arcana that way? So I'm going to Super Rod here, getting back the Shining Arcana Guardy, a Scream Tail, and a Ralts. Because if I do Zinnia's Resolve here, I would love to hit a Shining Arcana off of it. But I decided to go for the passive play and just pass my turn. I could have dumped some resources, got rid of Zinnias, got rid of Collapse Stadium, lose my Ultra Ball. I really don't want to get rid of the Luxurious Cape. So my decision here was to just play passive. I'm fine with the opponent getting a 2 prize card lead. And it was also very important to put down that Ralts, because now if they were to boss KO a Refinement Curlia, I still have a Curlia that can evolve into one of the Gardevoirs, and then a Ralts that can Rare Candy evolve into the other Gardevoir. My hope here is also that the opponent will play down enough basic Pokemon that my Zinnia's Resolve will be a little stronger next turn. So that's why I held on to it, because I didn't think I would be able to do too much that would impact the game here this turn. It would take a lot of cards to get the play I wanted, but now that I held on to these resources, I may just be able to one-hit knock out this Charizard EX. So I get Manaphy off the top. That's a useless card here, so I can just safely Refinement that away. And I do draw into a Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and also an Iono, which would get me 6 cards. Here I may have to decide if I want to attach a Luxurious Cape, but I think I'm going for the win condition of a Reversal Energy, as opposed to using the Luxurious Cape to power up this Gardevoir. I could have Ultra Balled for Gardevoir EX, but it would have had to have been evolved on top of the Refinement Curlia, which I had not used yet, and I didn't want to use that Curlia until after my Iono, so I can begin building up a larger hand post-Iono. And I am playing 4 Ultra Balls in this list, so it's pretty easy to find Guard EX or Ultra Ball. I'm probably never going to be putting that Zacian V down because I don't want to give my opponent a double prize Pokemon. And I have this Ultra Ball here ready to go for my Guardy EX. I also have the Reversal Energy in my hand, so this is all working out really nicely. And then I didn't Shining Arcana yet, so I can go ahead and do that. I find Worker Zinnia, neither of which I need, and I have plenty of energy in there for Psychic Embrace, so I will be able to one-hit KO this Charizard EX with the help of Reversal Energy, which counts as 3 energy of any type, so long as my opponent has less prize cards than me. So I go behind on prizes here, 4 to 6, but I'm going to even it up now, 4 to 4 prizes, and my opponent's board state is not great. They do have a Bibarel that can draw cards, they do have a Charmander down with an energy, but we'll have to see what they're able to do here. If they were to do something like boss KO my Gardevoir EX, this baby Guardy is just going to knock their Charizard right back out. They actually can knock me out with the Charmander here, though, which is interesting, because they have Vitality Band on Charmander, so it's very important to note which Charmanders and Charmeleons you're playing, because they actually do have really useful attacks. So the Charmander's Heat Tackle can do 30 plus 10 from the Vitality Band to knock out my Gardevoir, since I had to put 100 damage counters on it to take the KO on the Charizard EX. So it's actually really fortunate for them that they had the Vitality Band there on that Charmander so that they can make this play happen. But they're definitely going to want to find another Charmander, which they'll be able to do with that Artisan that they grabbed. So yeah, they can get down another Charmander. I don't have any capabilities of taking out 2 Charmanders at once in my deck, so they will definitely have at least 1 Charmander on the board guaranteed next turn after they knock out my active Gardevoir with Heat Tackle. So this is a really strong turn from them. They didn't have to use any 2 prize Pokemon, so at most I will just be able to even out the prize trade at 3-3. I think my best case scenario here would be Iono and take out their Bibarel, putting them down to a 3-card hand. So, and I can easily do that with Scream Tail. The Roaring Scream attack can snipe damage anywhere on the board, so I think this turn I'll go for Roaring Scream on the Bibarel plus Iono, putting them down to a 3-card hand. They do have Bidoof on the board, but they don't have it evolved in the Bibarel, so they'll have to find that off of the Iono to 3 plus their top deck. I'm going to go ahead and use the Artisan here for another Ralts. I have Counter Catcher, so I can actually Counter Catcher the Bibarel and knock it out that way. I can Counter Catcher up something like the Jirachi and just stick it there while I Scream Tail snipe the Bibarel. I could just pass on using this Counter Catcher completely as well. So I am going to bring the Bidoof up into the active with the Counter Catcher and then Iono. And then I'm going to knock out their Bibarel with the Scream Tail. So we'll activate Psychic Embrace. I'll be putting 1 onto the active so I can retreat it. And then the Scream Tail's Roaring Scream does 20 damage to any Pokemon for each damage counter on Scream Tail. So Psychic Embracing 3 times to Scream Tail will put 60 damage on it, meaning that it can snipe 120 anywhere. And although the Charmanders are what I'm afraid of in terms of attacking me, the Bibarel is what's going to help my opponent draw more cards every turn. So it's definitely important to target that down specifically here, especially when I paired it with the Iono and they don't have any Charizards on the board right now. So the Bibarel goes down. I draw a card off the prizes. It's Pal Pad. Not a big deal. I'm feeling pretty okay about my board. It is weak in the sense that I don't have any refinements down and I don't have any Shining Arcanas down. But I do have 3 Ralts. They can all evolve next turn if needed. Now my opponent's going to Artisan for the Manaphy because they're afraid of the Scream Tail. Makes sense. They could knock out my Scream Tail with the Charmander, but that's why I bossed up that Bidoof, so they couldn't just do that for free. So we'll have to see if they can just get this Bidoof out of the active and knock out my Scream Tail with their Charmeleon now. With the Vitality Band, that'll be able to do it. And they'll go down to a 2-3 prize card lead in that way. But now they do have the Luminion V on the board, so I will want to find a boss's orders to maybe take advantage of that and KO it, since I can't KO it with Scream Tail now that they have the Manaphy down. But yeah, that Counter Catcher play last turn was really, really important because it's going to make them waste a resource on getting this Bidoof out of the active if they want to take a KO on my Scream Tail, because my Pokemon are typically very easy to knock out after they attack because I'm damaging them myself with Gardevoir, but they actually are just going to not take a KO, not retreating the Bidoof into the Charmeleon. And so I get a free turn out of this, essentially. And now I will be able to take the prize lead. So I can just Roaring Scream the active Bidoof because they have Manaphy, stopping me from hitting anything on the bench. And I'm also going to check and see, is this Gardevoir have a Curlia underneath it? Does it have a Refinement Curlia underneath it? Because I might want to pick it up with Professor Tura's scenario so I can use that Curlia. And draw more cards, start getting into my boss's orders for the win condition. So I use Professor Tauros to pick up the Gardevoir, because now I can evolve the Curlia down onto one of these Ralts, and use Refinement to draw cards. Artisan's a really easy discard here. The opponent already has Artisan out. There's nothing I would want from Artisan. I don't really get anything useful there. Might be a good time to check my discard pile and see if there's any supporters that I want to reuse. Just Ionos and Tauros in there, and I would really love to see a boss. But I will Pal Pad the Iono back just because it can draw me cards, I think. No, we're just going to go with the Tauros. The Tauros can be nice for removing a Gardevoir EX from the board after I evolve it to use Psychic Embrace. And that could definitely come up next turn if I need to power up a Pokemon, but then Tauros the Gardevoir EX off the board, so the opponent has no way to win by taking 2 prizes on the following turn. So I can win next turn. It's just going to take a boss's orders on the Lumineon. Even if I don't, I feel pretty good about winning the following turn. The opponent's also putting a Charizard EX into the active here, so I could use Luxurious Cape on a Shining Arcana Gardevoir to win. My deck is pretty large right now, so an Iono could definitely hurt me. But the opponent doesn't have Bibarel, which is a really good sign. Okay, so they're going to knock out this Kirlia with the Charmeleon's Fire Blast. But they're leaving Charmeleon in the active, and my Screamtail can just easily return KO that, so I'm completely fine with that. Now I don't have to put down a 2-prize Pokemon onto my board, and I can just promote this Screamtail, knock out the Charmeleon, and go down to 1 prize card. I do get boss's orders, which is amazing, but I can't actually use it to much success since I don't have a Psychic Embrace Gardevoir, I don't have Rare Candy, I don't have any Kirlias. I can't really do much except knock out this Charmeleon. It would have actually been better for my opponent, I think, to knock out my active Pokemon with Charizard EX, because then I couldn't knock out anything with Screamtail this turn, but they didn't know the contents of my hand were this unfortunate. I don't believe I have any more basic Pokemon in the deck. No, I don't. I do have a lot of outs, though. I have a good bit of supporters. I don't think I have any Refinement Kirlias in the deck right now, but I do have Rare Candies. So there are a lot of cards in there that I would like to see, but there are also a lot of cards in my hand that I don't want. I believe I still have 1 Refinement Kirlia in the prize cards, so I should be able to take that. I have a 50-50 chance of taking the Refinement Kirlia off the prizes here with Roaring Scream, and then that's at least 2 extra cards guaranteed next turn if I don't get Iono'd. Here I'm just deciding, do I need to attach extra energies somewhere else? Do I need to boss's order something? I think it's safe to just Roaring Scream on the active, though. Let's see what I do here. Yeah, the timer's running down. I'm just going to Roaring Scream, jam 120 onto this active Charmeleon, take 1 prize card. Now I am close to winning the game with that 1 prize card taken. There's the Refinement Kirlia that I said I had a 50% chance of finding. And the opponent does not have a win condition on the board right now. There's nothing they can do to win the game on this turn. They're actually out of energy, it looks like, and they just pass. So are they out of energy? Can they just not find the energies? Because they did use that Charmeleon with 90, the 3 for 90 attack, and I can just boss up a single prizer and knock it out with Roaring Scream. I don't even need to do anything else for the game. Here in round 8, we lost the coin flip against Roaring Moon, and they will be choosing to go second, as they should. So here I just need to guarantee that I have at least 1 Ralts for next turn in case of something like an Escape Rope or Cross Switcher and KO on my Ralts. So we'll level ball here, check the prizes. I do see that I have 1 Refinement Kirlia prized. That should be fine. And we should expect that the Manaphy gets KO'd, and even if it doesn't, we can attach Retreat to the Manaphy, so I feel like the attachment to the Ralts there is very safe. And yeah, so next turn I have Iono, which I'll be hoping to find a Mirage Step and no refinements off of, so that I can actually Mirage Step those Kirlias onto the board. The Roaring Moon deck typically has a whole lot of actions on the first turn. going through the deck with item cards, discarding energies, accelerating energies. Here they use Luminous Sign to search out a Professor Sada's, accelerating energy to each of their Roaring Moon EXs, and then play a Pokestop, which presumably they'll be using soon, but not before they use an Ultra Ball to discard some more Dark energies, get a Mew EX out of the deck, and then they'll be looking for Dark patches off of this Pokestop. They find a Battle VIP pass and discard another Dark energy and a Professor Sada's. Attachment for turn to the Roaring Moon EX and then pass. So I will be able to safely Mirage Step as long as I Ono into not any Refinement Curlias. Even if I do, I also have the option of maybe Ultra Ball one away and then Super Rod. I considered, do I Pokestop? Maybe I just hit a level ball off the top and get Mirage Step the easy way. But instead I'll go with this, and yeah, no Mirage Steps there. So I think here the plan is I'm going to Fog Crystal a couple of cards out of the deck and then Pokestop, hoping that that Pokestop will find me an out to a Mirage Step. So a Level Ball or an Ultra Ball to get the Mirage Step with. Here we go with the Pokestop, and we actually dump a Mirage Step, so it's just going to be benching Ralts and pass, I believe. I could retreat and Teleportation Burst for 10, but I don't see much value in that, and I also don't want to put the 2-prizer Zacian down, so if the opponent had gotten a KO last turn and then this kind of draw happened to me, I'd probably lose the game, but since they whiffed a knockout last turn, I will have one more turn to get my setup together. They do find the cross switcher, so they'll be able to knock out my Ralts instead of the Manaphy, which is definitely preferred for them and not for me, because this Manaphy is useless. So I would have loved for the Manaphy to get KO'd instead of my Ralts with energy on it. I'll just promote the Manaphy in case I have a lackluster turn again. We'll leave that in the active, but it also has an energy on it to retreat. I top decked Zinnia's Resolve, and that will actually let me draw 6 cards. So this could be potentially very good for me. We'll get rid of that Zacian and an energy, and I find Super Rod. I also find Ultra Ball. Now the problem is I have a Refinement Curlia in my hand, so I would love to Ultra Ball that away and then Super Rod it into the deck so I can Mirage Step. But the Mirage Step is in my discard, so I would have to Super Rod first. Here I'm considering if I want to use the Pokestop. I'm going to kind of count my outs there. So I am going to use Pokestop, and I find a rare candy. I get rid of a Reversal Energy and a Shining Arcana Gardevoir. This is not looking like the best situation for me right now. Gonna use this Fog Crystal and see what kind of options I have. I do have 2 rare candies in my hand, so I could establish 2 Gardevoirs this turn. Ultra Balling, probably double Psychic. Yep, there we go. Ultra Ball away, double Psychic for the Refinement Curlia. So we can set up both of these Refinement Curlias, draw some cards, hope the opponent doesn't have another Gust effect. The Roaring Moon decks typically will play like 1 boss and 4 cross switchers, so while it's pretty easy for them to find a Gust effect at some point, it's not typical that they can reliably chain the Gust effects. So I don't think I want to Refinement away the Level Ball because I want that for another Ralts, so I get rid of the rare candy, which definitely makes sense here. And then I will Level Ball for the Ralts to better stabilize my board. And I could also attach an energy to a Curlia, which I'm definitely considering there with the Reversal Energy. But I'm already down a reversal, so if that Curlia were to get KO'd, then I have no reversals left. So I think it's either no energy or psychic energy attachment, and I'm going to go with no energy there. So the opponent is up 5 to 6 prizes. It's not as bad as it could be. They will go up 4 to 6 prizes this next turn, but that is kind of what you prepare for in the Roaring Moon matchup, and they do have the escape rope, so I'm going to lose another Ralts evolution line. So that's 2 Raltses down to their Morpeko's Energizer wheels. So on the next turn, I'm going to need either a boss's orders or a counter catcher. That way I can even the prize trade at 4-4 if I find a Gust effect to bring up Roaring Moon, or even a Luminion if I can't knock out a Roaring Moon. And there's a boss's orders right off the top of the deck. So maybe the game is finally turning around for me at this point after the pretty dreadful start that I've had. I think I can pretty safely get rid of this Cresselia with Refinement. I decide to get rid of the Mirage Step Curlia. Thinking about what to do here, there are a lot of cards in my hand that are playable. Thinking about how many cards in my deck would hurt to get rid of with Pokestop, probably not many. Well, there's a couple of them, 2 Shining Arcanas, but luckily I did just Super Rod my 3rd Shining Arcana back into the deck last turn. And I also get an Ultra Ball here, so I can now Ultra Ball for the 3rd Shining Arcana that I know is in my deck. And I have Boss's Orders, so that Boss's Orders is likely going to have to be my supporter for turn if I want to get back into this game. And then, of course, I now have Shining Arcana as an option to draw cards with, so I can get 2 with that. I get another Ultra Ball and a Guard EX, and I'm going to have to evolve that Guard EX. Now, the good thing is, if they were to Gust around my Gardevoir in the active to knock out my Gardevoir EX, they leave my Shining Arcana Gardevoir set up with enough energy to knock out a 2-prize Pokemon. So they would go down to 2 prizes, but then I would match them and go down to 2 prizes, probably not leaving any 2 prizers on my board, and that's where you can even out the prize trade, even when they go up 4 to 6. So here we will be matching them at 4 prizes by knocking out a Roaring Moon with the Brainwave from Gardevoir. Really powerful attack. We have the reversal energy to help out here as well, and I can also keep it out of Morpeko range by making sure that I only attach 3 psychics and attach a reversal energy. Now I'm going to Pal Pad back Zinnia's Resolve and Boss's Orders, I think. Definitely the Boss's Orders for another Gust effect later on. I was considering Zinnia's because it'll be a better amount of card draw to find Counter Catcher, but at this point, an Iono next turn would still draw me 4 cards, which is pretty good. And it can also disrupt the opponent's hand. And there's Counter Catcher off the prizes, actually, and that could be really massive. But like I said, I left my Gardevoir out of range of Morpeko just by 10 HP, and it's not weak to Dark, it's weak to Metal. So the Morpeko will not be able to KO my Gardevoir, which is really important. So they will have to bring up this Roaring Moon EX if they want to take a meaningful knockout this turn. They could, like I said, Gust up my Gardevoir EX, but they are going to knock out my active Gardevoir with Calamity Storm and not getting rid of the Stadium card, so just for 100. Now, all 3 Shining Arcana are in my discard. My discard is full of Ralts, Curlia, and Gardevoir at this point, even after I've already played 1 Super Rod. I'm going to promote the Cresselia there because you can't Psychic Embrace to Manaphy. And I top deck Iono, maybe thanks to that Pal Pad that I played. So here, something interesting I could do is I could use a Scream Tail with Luxurious Cape on it to attack this turn, and even if they knock out something with Cape on it, they're only going down to 1 prize card, and I'd be at 2, and then I have the opportunity to win on the following turn. So Ultra Ball here for exactly that Scream Tail with the Roaring Scream attack. Without the Luxurious Cape, it can do up to 160 damage, but with the Luxurious Cape, it can do up to 360 damage. I also do have Counter Catcher, but I don't think Counter Catcher is actually going to be coming into play here. I could do something like Counter Catcher up to Lumineon, knock it out with my Gardevoir EX, but also simultaneously set up enough energies onto my Scream Tail. But I think the easier line of play here is to just knock out the active Roaring Moon with Scream Tail. They respond with more Pekko, and then I need to Counter Catcher on the following turn. So maybe I just keep my hand. Maybe I don't actually play this Iono. I am going to decide to play the Iono, but you know what? I think it's fine because my deck is so small. I only have 9 cards left in the deck. And now the opponent's down to 3 cards in hand, so they might not even be able to return KO anything after this. I have nothing in the deck as far as something that Artisan can search out. We'll shuffle it up because I know the Counter Catcher's at the bottom now. But remember, the beauty of Counter Catcher is that you don't need a supporter slot for it. You can Iono and then play Counter Catcher. So that's definitely possible, but I also have Boss's Orders in my hand, which I had Pal Pad back a couple of turns ago, so I think I'm fine as long as the opponent doesn't disrupt my hand. If they were to Iono me, they put me closer to Counter Catcher, even though they take away the boss. If they were to judge, I have a chance of drawing either Bosses or Counter Catcher out of a 12-card deck. And we'll promote the Scream Tail with 12 damage counters on it, meaning it can do 240 damage to any of my opponent's Pokemon, thanks to that Luxurious Cape, giving it some more HP. So I'll go ahead and hit the Roaring Moon with Roaring Scream for 240 damage, taking 2 prizes. The opponent promotes more Pekko, and we'll have to see what they can do here. If they can't knock out this Scream Tail, then I just have game knocking out their Lumineon next turn. Now having the prize trade in my favor. So they do have the Dark Patch. They can free retreat within a Hungry Hurry on the active Morpeko, attack with the bench Morpeko, knock out my Scream Tail, and then all I have to do is boss up their Lumineon and knock it out with Miracle Force. It's a pretty easy win condition here. And the Moons will typically have like a Squawkabilly or a Lumineon V on the board, which are really easy knockouts either for Scream Tail or a Shining Arcana Guardy or Gardevoir EX even, like we'll see here next turn. So there's the knockout with Energizer Wheel, moving energies to the benched Morpeko, knocking out my Scream Tail. They go down to 2 prizes. And in this case, I'm sorry, they go down to 1 prize because I did have the Luxurious Cape. So in this case, either Counter Catcher or Boss's Orders would work. I have the Boss's Orders, Psychic Embrace 3 times. There's the Counter Catcher as well. I am spoiled with choice. I can just attach 3 energies to my Gardevoir EX, bring up the Lumineon, and that will be the game with Miracle Force doing 190 damage. The Lumineon has 170, so it's an easy knockout there. And yeah, that's how Gardevoir comes back in this matchup against Roaring Moon in round 8 of the Late Night 150. So moving on to a record of 7-1 after that match. Round 9 of the Late Night going first against Turbo Lost Zone box with no new cards in it. They're playing a pretty stereotypical old Turbo Lost Zone list, with a couple of trekking shoes being the one interesting thing. So I'm not playing the Jirachi for this matchup, but I am playing the Cresselia. I also have Manaphy to protect against Moonlight Shuriken, so my board's pretty safe here, even though I only have 1 Ralts. I do need to attach an energy, though, if I want to have a Mirage Step next turn. And I didn't attach the energy, but The reason why I didn't attach energy there is because I do have Professor Toro's scenario, so I can just Toro up my Greninja and then Ultra Ball for a Mirage Step that way. So the Professor Toro's actually gives you this very niche scenario where you don't have to preemptively attach an energy to retreat next turn for the Mirage Step, so I can just safely hold that energy in my hand. And I'm playing against Turbo Lost Zone, which typically won't play any hand disruption, so I am safe to just hold on to these resources. The opponent uses Escape Rope, and I'll promote my Manaphy. I don't want to lose the Ralts, obviously, and I would have loved for them to attack into the Radiant Greninja instead, but that's just not the way things panned out here, so they will have an opportunity to spit innocently onto my Manaphy, knocking it out for the free attack. Switch cart into another Comfey, using plenty of flower selectings this turn. And now switch cart into the Cramorant for the spit innocently on Manaphy. And I won't even have to use that Professor Toro's anymore now, because I can just promote my Ralts and safely get the Mirage Step. Although I would love to see a Super Rod so I can get my Manaphy back, but I might just have to hope my opponent cannot get the Moonlight Shuriken. Here I Ultra Ball away Professor Toro's and Ultra Ball to grab the Mirage Step. I do have one Refinement Curlia prized. And I'm gonna go with this Iono, looking for the Super Rod, also taking a risk of finding more Curlias, but I think the benefit of finding Super Rod there is better than risking drawing into Refinement Curlias. Like, the value of potentially finding Super Rod is so great that I'll take that risk, because I don't want my board to just be demolished by a Moonlight Shuriken next turn. So I'll go ahead and Artisan. I'm going to really set up my board with a ton of Raltses here, so that if they do Moonlight Shuriken my double Curlia, I have more Ralts to potentially evolve into. I'm going to forego the Moonlight the concealed cards with Greninja, so I don't draw into any of those Refinement Curlias. So Escape Rope, pretty easy promote of the Radiant Greninja, because if they have to use Spit innocently, they'll just spit into the Radiant Greninja and not take a KO, which would be very preferred for me. So it looks like they couldn't find the Mirage Step, and they couldn't find the Mirage Gate, and they are just going to attach Retreat and spit innocently into my Radiant Greninja, which is perfect. The Radiant Greninja does not get KO'd, and all of my Curlias and Ralts and everything survives, so now I can have a pretty great setup here. The dream would be to have a collapsed stadium or something to remove this Radiant Greninja. I already discarded Professor Toro's. I could always Pal Pat that back, though. Using my refinements, building up psychic energy into the discard pile. I'm gonna rare candy this Gardevoir EX down onto a Ralts, so that takes one Ralts out of potentially being Lost Mind or Moonlight Shurikened. And then I'm going to boss up the Radiant Greninja, since I don't have bench space for the Manaphy, although I do have Super Rod. Why not just knock out the Radiant Greninja and remove that threat? And I'm retreating my Radiant Greninja into a Gardevoir EX, so I can use Miracle Force for 190 and present this pretty bulky Pokemon that my opponent shouldn't be able to KO with anything. It's at 250 HP remaining, so if they were to set up something like a Dragonite V to do 250 damage to me, That's certainly possible, but then I'll be able to knock the 2 Prizer back out with the help of my Shining Arcana Gardevoir. So should be overall an even trade for me, and I get them down to a lower prize count early, which means that I can Iono them to 3 cards next turn. So although it might seem risky to attack with the 2 prize Pokemon here, I'm actually accelerating their prize cards so that I can force them into a faster game with more 2 prize trades, so my Ionos get stronger faster, essentially. So Dragon Gale will knock out my Gardevoir EX, but like I said, that was kind of a calculated allowance of that knockout for my Gardevoir, because now I can trade favorably, or I can trade evenly into this Dragonite V, but knock it out with a single prize Pokemon. Radiant Greninja, discarding Psychic Energy for concealed cards. I have 2 Reversal Energies in my hand now. I have Artisan available if I want to grab that Manaphy now. And I'm going to attach to the active Curly. I actually end up drawing into the Manaphy, and I'm looking for a Shining Arcana to put onto that active Curlia. And I still have a refinement to use. I believe I could level ball for 1 more refinement, unless both of my refinements are already on the board, but I believe okay, yeah, so I do have a refinement underneath that Shining Arcana Gardevoir. And then I'll just Iono for 5, but then I can also draw 2 more, like I said, with the refinement. And it's pretty safe here to assume that I'll be able to find a Shining Arcana, because I do play 3 Shining Arcana and 4 Ultra Ball, so I often have a lot of outs available to find the Pokemon that I need in this deck list. So I can grab that, and now because of the Shining Arcana attachments and the Reversal Energies, I am just 1 energy away from being able to take this KO without putting the Gardevoir EX on the board, but it looks like I will have to. I don't hit 1 more Psychic Energy, so I'll have to just go ahead and Psychic Embrace. And that Gardevoir, unfortunately, now is in range of the Sable IKO. But I collapsed Stadium away my Greninja, which feels good. And I'm also going to put the Tauros back into the deck, so I can remove a damaged Pokemon from play at some point. So now, here we are at 3-3 prize cards. The opponent can certainly take at least 1 prize card this turn. I don't see a way for them to take more than 1 prize card, so the trade should be pretty controlled now at 1 prize card a time for the rest of the game. I'm just going to have to, at some point now, deny them of a prize card for return, since they are on the they're ahead in the pace. So they'll go from 3 to 2, then 2 to 1, then 1 to 0, and they'll go to 0 while I'm still at 1. So I'm going to need to slow them down at some point, make them take 2 turns for a KO instead of 1 turn for a KO, which I should be able to do just by limiting my board and forcing them to choose between a bunch of Gardevoirs that have too much HP for them to even KO. The Luxurious Cape could also definitely come into play here, especially since only damage specifically takes the extra prize card. If they were to knock something out with damage counters, they don't get the extra prize card for it. So this should just be a Lost Mine onto my Gardevoir, 12 damage, but it looks like they're actually going to go for 70 on the Ralts, because that's something that isn't going to stick around. I can evolve that into something with more HP, so I do see the logic here in putting the 70 on that. And then they're going to spread a little bit of damage between Manaphy and Gardevoir, but this gives me a really good opportunity to use Cresselia actually to heal some of that damage at least. So I think my best play here is going to involve Cresselia. And I have an Iono, so I can Iono them down to 2. And I think the best thing to knock out here is likely the Sableye on the bench, so they don't get the chance to promote a Comfey and use Flower Select to then retreat into the Sableye. Because the only difference between the bench Sableye and the active Sableye is 20 damage. That's not a big deal. So, yeah, I believe the play here is Moonglow reverse the benched Sableye, and I might not even Iono here, because I'm not sure that their hand's even good. And I'd much rather just let them draw some more cards, build a hand, and then Iono them to 1, which will be really, really impactful. So yeah, since they already have a guaranteed Sableye ready to go, I don't think the Iono to 2 would really matter too much, so I definitely, looking back now at this game, agree with holding that Iono. Really great play. I could have made some use of the Luxurious Cape, maybe, but if I attach it to Manaphy, they knock out Gardevoir. If I attach it to Gardevoir, they knock out Manaphy, so it's not like it's removing a prize card option from the board, really. So the opponent's Super Rod Sableye back into the deck. They're going to Nest Ball for it. They're just thinning out the deck very well, thinning out their hand very well, so that an Iono could potentially not hurt them as much. But this Counter Catcher in my hand, I think, is actually going to matter a good bit, and we'll see why on this next turn. The opponent is just going to take out my Cresselia with Lost Mind, because I can continue healing things with it. Yeah, we'll go ahead and promote that Gardevoir. I think I was counting their lost vacuums there, seeing how many are in the discard and how many are in the lost zone. Trying to see if I can set up some sort of checkmate board state. I'm going to start this turn with Ultra Ball, never benching more Raltses. Grab the Scream Tail, going to see what's in my deck. Thinking if I can draw into that Professor Tauros potentially. Gonna go ahead and Shining Arcana. I see a Super Rod and a Rare Candy. If I see the Professor Tauros, what I could do is pick up the Manaphy, attach the Cape to Gardevoir, and then there's nothing that they can knock out. But I am going to Super Rod the Cresselia back in, actually. This means that I can knock out something on the bench and trap something in the active. Like that Cramorant, maybe. The Cramorant won't be able to KO a Cresselia, because I'll heal the 20 off of the Cresselia. And I can knock out their Sableye on the bench with energy, putting them in a really weird situation. So yeah, we'll Counter Catcher that Cramorant. Even though it's an attacker, it doesn't draw them cards like Comfey would. And then Luxurious Cape, I don't know that it actually really matters on this Cresselia, because there's other targets that they could knock out with the Sableye if they get the Sableye into the active. But I'm going to Iono them to 1 like I talked about. That's why I let them kind of build a hand there, so I could just Iono it down this turn. And then I just need to put a couple more damage counters on the board before my Moonglow reverse. And knocking out the Sableye with the energy will be the best play possible here. Leaving this Cramorant in the active, of course. Yep, so knocking out the Sableye with energy on it, leaving Cramorant in the active. They could do 110 to my Cresselia, maybe if they find a boss or something. But I think they're pretty out of a lot of resources. They have 2 cards in hand, no way to draw extra cards. And my Cresselia has 220 HP, which doesn't actually matter here, but is pretty cool nonetheless. They're going to play Pal Pad and Heavy Ball, but they have no way to draw any cards, so none of that matters. They spit innocently 110, and I will be able to take my final prize card here. Just Miracle Force a couple to Cresselia, Lunar Blast for 110, and that'll be enough for the KO on the Cramorant, taking the last prize in a pretty long game against Turbo Lost Zone Box. Throughout Phase 1, I was able to win 8 out of my 9 matches, only dropping a single round to Fusion Strike Mew, which can be a real problem for my deck if my setup is unsatisfactory and their setup is aggressive. Overall, being 8-1 with my brand new theoretical build of Gardevoir EX felt good, but I knew the competition would only get harder in Phase 2 of the event. Alright, they have a pretty good setup here. I have Candy in hand for turn 2, so that's really nice. I also have a pretty decent hand otherwise. So let's search the deck, see what's up in here. The game I'm not going to use Mirage Step, I have all 4 Curlias. Maybe I will end up using it. We prized Cress, which is unfortunate for sure. But what could you do? Zacian is actually not a bad attacker in this matchup because they have to hit it twice. So I'm definitely tempted to grab the Zacian. Let's see. So Ralts, Level Ball's another Ralts. Yeah, let's grab the Zacian, because this is also going to accelerate an energy onto my board, and I can always collapse it or Toro it if I want to. So we'll go ahead and Level Ball for 1 more Ralts. And I'm going to just go ahead and check the prizes again. So I prized 1 Guardy EX. I have Toro, Collapsed, Counter Catcher. Those are all important cards in the matchup. Luxury Cape could come into play later on. Okay, we get the Ralts. And let's see, they've got just 1 in there so far. So I am just going to Roar of the Sword. And we'll put it onto Zacian, so that way that's 1 less energy I have to attach to it with Gardevoir. And this route of play I think is correct because of a few things. One, I have Ultra Ball Rare Candy in my hand, and my opponent will not be disrupting my hand. And number 2, because I prized Cresselia, and that would typically be my turn to play when I have Candy Guardy. I could also go in with Guardy EX as my attacker, but that does run some risks. They do have the Drapion V, and I'd rather go in with the Zacian, leave my Gardevoir safely on the bench. So they will be able to attack with Spit Innocently this turn. 4 cards into the Lost Zone, and Technical Machine De-Evolution is in the Lost Zone, which is definitely something to note. Okay, so here I plan to Ultra Ball away Pal Pad plus my top deck. Really good that the top deck is a Psychic Energy. So I'll go ahead and Ultra Ball those away. Grab Guardy EX. Candy it down. And then Iono for 6, and we get rid of our opponent's 9-card hand. Very nice. Level Ball for Refinement Curlia. And I'm actually not going to get rid of the Psychic Energy in my hand because I want to attach that to Zacian. The Artisan I think would help my opponent right now more than it would help me. So I'm going to Refinement away the Artisan. And then I'm going to Psychic Embrace, 1 Psychic to Zacian. And attach for turn to Zacian. And then we can attack with Storm Slash for 150. This is the first time, so this is round 10. In rounds 1 through 9, I did not use Zacian at all. At least to my best memory, I did not use Zacian at all throughout the first phase of the tournament. But it definitely comes in handy here. Maybe it would just be better as a Heavy Ball, assuming Heavy Ball, because then I could have gotten my... if I hit the Hisuian Heavy Ball naturally, that is. then I could just get the crests out of the prizes, and then I wouldn't need Zacian for this play if I had Cresselia available. Okay, the opponent is bringing out Radiant Charizard already. Raihan to it. Now, they don't have... Are they... Oh, maybe they're finding a Lost Vacuum. That way they can Mirage Gate to the Radiant Zard. They're going to go down to 3 prizes that way if they do, and so my next Iono could really hurt them because of that. That's what I think the play here is. Grab Lost Vacuum away, and then they have to hope that they have Fire Energy, Psychic Energy, and they have to have Mirage Gate in the hand as well. So there's the Lost Vacuum. They are going through a lot of resources to do this. It is a big play. And if they aren't playing down any other Pokemon for turn, they're going to leave themselves with a really weak board. And they're going to get Iono down to 3. Lost Vacuum away, so now they're at 7. And now they can Mirage Gate. Do they have the Psychic and the Fire in the deck? They do. Now, do they have the attachment for turn? They had everything. Wow. Okay, yeah. Nice knockout from the Radiant Charizard. Really impressive attack there to be able to do that. And now what do I want to do here? I'm thinking about using Scream Tail to attack one of the benched Pokemon so Radiant Charizard gets stuck in the active because it can't use Combustion Blast twice in a row. But I think it's better to just KO the Radiant Zard. So I'm going to send up Gardevoir EX. And let's see. I definitely want to Iono. Or do I? We have 3 Psychic in the discard. Okay. Because I like the Toro. That's the thing. I really like holding on to the Toro. Let's Refinement away 1 Iono. Okay. And I also like the idea that they played themselves down to a 2-card hand, and now they're just playing off of what is in their prize cards. But if they can get Radiant Charizard back, I'm looking at their deck list, then they can knock out my Gardevoir. So I'm going to get rid of Boss, and I don't think I'm going to need the Luxury Cape this game. So I'm going to get rid of that. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of that. And grab Gardevoir. I want to make my board so that they cannot use Sableye to any real effect. So I'm going to candy that down, and then Iono. I need a manual attachment. Perfect. Let's go ahead and Shining Arcana. Okay, we have manual attachment. Let's Ultra Ball away these 2 for another Shining Arcana. Okay. And then I'll attach and Psychic Embrace twice. Perfect. Now let's see if I want to Super Rod anything this turn. I have Ralts, Curlia. I could Super Rod those, but it doesn't feel very necessary. So I'm just going to go ahead and Miracle Force for the knockout. And let's see, do they play Palpad? No, so it's impossible for them to attack with Drapion V this upcoming turn because they're down a Mirage Gate and a Raihan, and the only way they can do it is with Raihan attach Mirage Gate all in the same turn. And They've used their only Raihan and one of their only 2 Mirage Gates. Okay. Rope up a Gardevoir is not a problem at all. Alrighty, they have Cram. They can do 120 Spit if they have a way to retreat. And they don't have a way to retreat. Wonderful. Okay, let's get started here then. I have 1 energy in the discard. I think I'll start with a Shining Arcana. Okay, Reversal is beautiful. That is a sick draw. Shining Arcana again. Professor Toro is kind of insane if I get to use it. But I don't want to pick up anything right now. That's the problem. Okay, so I guess I can just Zinnia here. Why not, really? So let's Fog Crystal. Get a Psychic. We'll Zinnia away 2 Psychics. Counter Catcher. Could this get any better? Probably not. That's really, really good. Counter Catcher. I'm gonna knock it out with a Reversal, so I don't even have to damage my Gardevoir. Just really, really great. Okay. And you know what? I am going to get these 2 back, and I'm going to... I have Curly in hand, so I'm just going to level ball the Ralts. And then we'll Brainwave for KO. The only attacker on their board. Makes sense to take that out. And now I am down to 3 prizes, so if they happen to have a Roxanne in their hand or they draw into it, they can play Roxanne to really help them out and also hurt my hand size. You know, I have the Professor Toros, I have Collapse Stadium, I have Curlier Refinement. There's a lot of strong cards in my hand right now. Also, their Charizard is getting easier to use now that I'm taking more prizes, so Charizard only takes 2 energy to use now. And once I take 1 more, then it will only be taking 1 energy. Colress, love to see it. That means Roxanne is not happening. They have Jirachi now, so just in case of Cresselia shenanigans, but remember I can still Cresselia the active. Oh, no retreat. Wonderful. That's really, really good. Let's see. Sorry, I got a message in the Limitless chat, but it's not important right now. Okay, so what do I want to do? If I could boss up the Sableye, that would be best. Have I used boss yet? I have, and I've also used Palpat, so that will not be happening. Let's start with a Fog Crystal. I actually shouldn't have Fog Crystal because I want to hit an energy off of Shining Arcana, but I do have a pretty small deck, so still very possible. There we go. Got a little distracted by the Limitless chat there. Okay, so that's good. That means I can just do this, and now we're already attacking. So I think that's exactly what I want to do, so I'm going to go ahead and attach that. Now let's see if I have candies left. I think I used both. Yeah, I used both candies, so that's not an option. I'm going to go ahead and evolve this Curlia. And do I want to refine anything here? We don't need Manaphy. We definitely don't need Manaphy. They're also not playing... they're not playing Echoing Horn, so I don't have to worry about that. I think I'm pretty good to go. I'm going to bench this Cresselia. Yeah, I'm going to bench the Cresselia. If they knock out Cresselia, that means they didn't knock out Curlia. So I'm quite fine with that. And then Brainwave. The Roxanne could be coming any day now. The good news is that it shuffles, not puts it at the bottom, so I have a pretty thin deck, so I have a pretty good chance of getting back my Tauros from the 2 cards, the top deck, the Refinement, and 2 Shining Arcanas. We're just going to see a Clara here, but they do play counter catchers. They don't play any way to buff up the damage of the Radiant Charizard, but we could still always see something like a counter catcher up my Gardevoir. I think they're just going to take out the active Gardevoir, though, if anything, here. Yeah, I'm really not seeing a way that they win this. I'm just looking over the list. We got the counter catcher. That's really the only interesting card I see that they have at their disposal now that I've went ahead. They don't play Defiance Band, anything like that. So let's see where this Lost Mine damage will go. They are going to knock out the Kirlia and take a prize card. And I think they're going to put the rest on Gardevoir EX. Yep. Okay, so if I heal 20 with Cresselia, they can still KO with the Radiant Charizard. That's what they want to do. So what I have to do here is Toro my Gardevoir. It's pretty simple, I think. But first we're going to use Psychic Recharge to make sure I have 2 attackers ready to go. This is currently doing 120. It's not enough to knock out Radiant Charizard. If I put 1 more energy on, it becomes 1 energy away from knocking out Radiant Charizard. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm also going to Psychic Embrace 3 times here, just checking the clock. We have plenty of time. And I believe I can checkmate here. Then I'm going to Professor Toro this Gardevoir. All the energy comes off. And just, I'm pretty sure there's no, yeah, there's no Echoing Horn. So I'm going to put energies back in my deck because they're pretty much the only thing I need at this point. And then I can Shining Arcana. Get energy. We'll put that here. Shining Arcana. No energy that time, that's fine. Yeah, and that's everything we need to do. So Brainwave KO. They cannot take 2 prizes here. Their best bet is to knock out my benched Gardevoir if possible with the Charizard, because my active Gardevoir still needs 1 more energy to knock out Charizard. It's doing 150 right now. So if they could Roxanne and Counter Catcher, then I mean, I do have 2 energy in my 3 card deck, I believe. I'm fine with sending up Cresselia because I have energies. Yeah, Cresselia is definitely the send up, because if they knock it out with Charizard, I'm fine. And if they don't Roxanne me, I have Fog Crystal in the hand. Even if they do Roxanne me, my outs to retreating Cresselia are pretty good. I have Fog Crystal, I have Reversal Energy. I'm going to draw 2 cards plus top deck plus 2 Shining Arcanas. Now this Mirage Gate I think is just to retreat. But if they knock out my Cresselia, then I just bring up the Gardevoir that has 60 damage on it, and that takes a knockout on Radiant Charizard. There's the Counter Catcher. So they will KO that one. And here comes the Roxanne, I presume. No Roxanne. GG. Energy. And Brainwave KO. GG. So far, I had won 2 rounds and lost 2 rounds in the second phase due to a shaky setup against Lost Zone, and prizing all 3 of my Shining Arcana against Chi and Palback's Caliber with Iron Hands. I prized every Shining Arcana Gardevoir. I'm playing 3, and I prized all 3. Not taking any risks, I agreed on an intentional draw with my round 14 opponent who is playing Snorlax Stall. I was pretty sure my list was well equipped to beat Snorlax Stall with Professor Tauros and Palpad, but it was past midnight at this point of the tournament, and I was fine with taking some rest before the top 8 matches begun. Winning the coin flip in the mirror match is obviously really great. That means I will be the first one to use Mirage Step, so long as I can get a minimal setup and Mirage Step is not prized. Right now with this starting hand, I don't have a way to search out Mirage Step. I do top deck that Curlia off of a mulligan, so we'll have to search the deck here, see exactly what is prized if Mirage Step is available. It is not. So I've actually prized one refinement and one Mirage Step here in this first game of top 8 versus the Gardevoir mirror match. So with the Fog Crystal, I grab Cresselia, and I'm going to have to bench a whole bunch of Ralts because, like I said, I prized one refinement, one Mirage Step, so this is looking like a game where Rare Candy is going to have to pull its weight. The opponent Ionos, and this hand is okay. My last hand had a Refinement Curlia, so it was automatically better. Let's see what we can do with this one. I think I just have to start with an Iono pretty much. I can Fog Crystal first for a Ralts, but after that it's just going to have to be Iono and see what I can get. I do find 2 Level Ball, and I have 2 Refinement Curlia in the deck. So that's good, so I can go grab both of those. I'll start refining and drawing cards. We'll just evolve the one for now. No reason to evolve both before the first refinement. We'll discard a Psychic Energy and go ahead and evolve the next one. Refine again, away the worker, since my opponent won't have any stadium cards that I need to remove, like Path to the Peak, or maybe even Lost City or Temple of Sinnoh. From there, I'll just pass, and then next turn I can start doing things. So we'll have to see if my opponent is able to get the Mirage Step here. They do Iono me again. They have the second energy there on the Ralts, so that if the Mirage Step were to live, they can use Brainwave after evolving into Shining Arcana the next turn. They already do have 1 refinement on the board, so level balling for another Ralts here would make sense. Level ball for Jirachi because I do have this Cresselia. That also makes sense as well. So they'll go ahead and Mirage Step for 2 more Curlia. I'll start my turn with a Refinement, getting rid of a Level Ball. Since I don't have any more Curlias in the deck, there's really not much I want to Level Ball for right now. This turn, I'm going to be looking to take a prize card, knock out one of their Refinement Curlias if possible. I do have Boss, which would allow me to do that. I can't do it with Cresselia like I would want to because of the Jirachi. So I could actually just use Cresselia's Moonglow Reverse to knock out their active Curlia. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'll retreat into the Cresselia. And yeah, I'm actually going to use Lunar Blast to knock out this Refinement Curlia, because I have the Boss. This is actually a really convenient hand here. So ideally what I would like to always do is knock out a Refinement. It would be a lot easier if I could just do that with Moonglow Reverse, but I can't because of that Jirachi's ability protecting their benched Pokemon from my basic Pokemon's attacks that place damage counters. So it will have to just be a Boss and KO with Lunar Blast, stifling their setup a little bit. Now they're only down to 2 refinements, just like I was. I do have a Shining Arcana Gardevoir evolved onto one of those Refinement Guardies, or one of those Refinement Curlias now, though. The opponent does have access now to Reversal Energy and also Counter Catcher, because I was the one to take the first prize card. So they're going to kind of match what I did here and Counter Catcher up my Curlia and KO with Brainwave. So their setup is looking stronger than mine, but I am in the lead in terms of prize cards because I've set the pace now that I'll go down to 4 prizes and then they'll go down to 4 prizes. So if we keep trading that way, just naturally I will take all 6 prize cards first. So at some point they're going to have to try to either slow me down or take an extra prize card on one of their turns by knocking out a 2-prize Pokemon. It's pretty natural here to just Iono. I'll get more cards. Their hand goes to the bottom of the deck. I now have Screamtail as an available option, which could be really, really good because they're protecting their benched Pokemon from my Moonglow reverse, but they're not protecting it from Screamtail's Roaring Scream. I have 2 energy in the discard. I'll have a third after I retreat the Cresselia, so I have plenty to use this Roaring Scream to knock out a Refinement Kirlia. And you'll see here that this matchup can really just boil down to who can more efficiently pick off the opponent's Refinement Kirlias, and in an even broader scope, just who can pick off the opponent's Gardevoir evolution lines. Sometimes even just knocking out Raltses or Gardevoirs can be good, but the Refinement Kirlias are really just such a huge resource because not only do they discard to draw 2 cards, but then after doing that, they can evolve into a Gardevoir, either Shining Arcana to draw 2 more cards, or a Gardevoir EX to then use Psychic Embrace, which your whole deck kind of functions off of. They're going to Zinnia's away a Headquarters and a Level Ball there to draw some cards up. And my board is fully protected from a Screamtail. Their board is fully protected from a Cresselia, but I play both Cresselia and Screamtail, so they would need to protect with Manaphy and Jirachi to not have a susceptible bench to both of these attackers at the same time. They'll knock out my Screamtail with Gardevoir's Brainwave attack, and that's great for me because they did not knock out one of my Kirlias or Gardevoirs. And I'll just promote this Cresselia now. It has energy on it that I would like to retreat to get the energy off of it. They even out the prize trade at 4-4, but as I've stated, I will always be setting the pace now since I took the first prize card, until of course they can knock out a 2-prize Pokemon. So now is about the time where I'll start thinking about maybe collapsing away that Gardevoir, or Toroing up the Gardevoir EX just to remove a 2-prize Pokemon from their options to knock something out. So I'll retreat that Cresselia. I have to attach enough energy here to knock out their active Gardevoir. And I might just decide to collapse away my Gardevoir EX here, but I could also just wait another turn. It's typically pretty good to do it on the turn when they're at 3 prize cards. So yeah, I'll just leave my Gardevoir EX where it is and KO with Brainwave. They evolve Gardevoir EX, and they are also going to bench Screamtail now. Psychic Embrace to the Ralts, and it looks like they want to attack Roaring Scream into my active Gardevoir here. That's the only thing Roaring Scream can attack into. Since they benched it, I assume that's their plan. They'll evolve the Kirlia after retreating, because the Kirlia has 2 retreat, the Ralts only has 1, so that's important to know when you're playing the Gardevoir deck. And they're going to play Super Rod, get back some of those Gardevoir pieces, probably a Shining Arcana and a Refinement if I had to guess here. Yeah, so they'll get a Mirage Step, a Refinement, and a Cresselia. No Refinements to retrieve in the discard pile. Then they just need to put one more Psychic Embrace energy onto the Screamtail to KO my active Gardevoir. So yeah, they'll go ahead and do that now. They were counting up their math, and that'll do 120 damage to one of my Pokemon, but of course Manaphy stopping them from doing it to any of my benched Pokemon. So I'm going to Super Rod my Screamtail, a Refinement, and Gardevoir all back into the deck, because they're going to be important pieces to help me finish up this game. Refinement away a Psychic Energy, and I go into a Gardevoir. I'm going to Zinnia's away one of those Shining Arcanas, since I do play 3, and I'm not going to need all 3 to finish out this game. And here what I could actually do is Luxury Cape on the Screamtail and KO their Gardevoir EX. And then next turn, I just have to take a single prize, which will be very easy to do. So Screamtail showing its full strength here with the luxurious cape, bringing it up to 190 HP. Also making it worth an extra prize card, but since I took the first prize card, it doesn't matter. Then I think I'm just going to want to thin out the deck here. I can go get that other Kirlia. I'm going to want to prepare for my opponent's Iono, but I'm pretty sure that there's nothing the opponent can do. Since these online events are open deck list, I already know that my opponent is not playing Lost Vacuum to do something like vacuum away the Screamtail's tool and knock out a Gardevoir EX all in the same turn. So I'll Roaring Scream for 320 damage onto their Gardevoir EX. Now I'm only at 1 prize card and they're at 3. Knowing the contents of their deck list, there is no way for them to win. They Counter Catcher up my mana fee, but of course we know this is not going to matter because my Screamtail can just attack next turn and I only need 1 more prize card. So my opponent's going through the motions, playing it out. They're going to Iono me here, but there really is just nothing they can do about this. I think they'll Moonglow reverse my Screamtail on the bench and then I guess kind of hope that my mana fee's stranded, but I have this reversal energy in my hand anyway. It's the only card I drew off of Iono. But I still would have top deck plus refinement, then maybe a Shining Arcana, so I would still be drawing plenty of cards with several ways to get this mana fee out of the active position. Not only energies, but also Professor Toro is an option for getting it out of the active position. So Moonglow reversed are going to actually knock out the Kirlia, which is really smart, because their hope is that my mana fee would get stuck in the active, but it does not, and I will just Roaring Scream and take the KO on Cresselia, winning game 1 of my top 8 match. So in game 2 here, we have a kind of what I call an environmental factor of the online events. I was repeatedly asking my opponent in the chat on Play Limitless if they would like to go first or second. They never responded and the timer ran out, and since I won the coin flip, the timer just gave it to me to go first. So unfortunately for my opponent, I guess I went first twice in the mirror in a row, even though I won game 1. But that was just how it happened because I was asking my opponent if they would like first or second, and no, I didn't get any response. So here, I see that I have Mirage Step available. I do have a Refinement in my hand though, so I'm going to go ahead and get some Raltses down and yeah, and pass it over to my opponent. So my opponent plays Iono, and I get Mirage Step plus energy in my hand, which is fantastic. So this should be a very good turn 2 for me. We'll go ahead and evolve that Kirlia and just Mirage Step right off the bat for triple Kirlia Refinement. This is going to be a really smooth game with this setup here. So my opponent evolves into Mirage Step Kirlia. Looks like they probably only have 2 refinements in the deck because they did bench a Screamtail before using Mirage Step. Now I can just draw an absurd amount of cards this turn, and I have so many options as to what to do. So I hit an energy off the Shining Arcana, which is really good because that means I can potentially just not bench, not evolve a Gardevoir EX. I just need to find another energy here. So I'm going to Level Ball Thin the deck and then Worker. Or I could Shining Arcana on the active first before the Worker. So I think that's what I'm doing here. Yeah, so I'll evolve in Shining Arcana. I don't get an energy, but I can Level Ball again, thin out the deck, and then Worker. So I do Worker into an energy. That's my manual attachment for turn. And I have 2 rare candies in my hand, so I could Ultra Ball for another Shining Arcana and candy it down, but I don't think it's really necessary to do that. I already have another Shining Arcana on deck, 2 refinements and 2 Ralts. I just have a very good board here. But I don't have room on my board for mana fee. That's what I don't have. So maybe I could have not benched one of those Ralts and had a mana fee in its place. So the opponent candies down a Guardi EX, Psychic Embrace to Screamtail, and they're just going to snipe one of my Refinement Curlias. Fog Crystal for an energy to toss away with this Refinement. And I see another Fog Crystal off of the Refinement. I'm going to bench this Manaphy now so I can protect myself from Roaring Scream. And I might want to use that boss's orders this turn to knock out one of their Refinements, bringing them down to just one Refinement, one Guardi EX. They have a very cluttered board with the Jirachi and the Manaphy, which is kind of what my deck list with Cresselia and Screamtail not forces them to do, but definitely encourages them to do that. So they have these techs on the bench instead of actual good cards. My opponent starts the turn with a counter catcher there, bringing up the Curlia so they can knock that out with Roaring Scream since I do have the Manaphy down. They're going to Iono me, and I had Super Rod in my hand, which I definitely want to use, so hopefully I can find a Super Rod after they knock out this Curlia, because now I'll have two Refinement Curlias in my discard pile that I want back into my deck. So Roaring Scream takes out the Curlia, which was counter-catchered up to get around Manaphy's Wave Veil. And I can just promote this Gardevoir, still having no double prize Pokemon on the board. I'm just going to sit that Gardevoir, sit that Reversal Energy there with the Shining Arcana Guardi, and then Iono, and I do find the Super Rod, which is great. So Super Rod for double Refinement and Cresselia sounds good to me. And then I can Shining Arcana and try to draw into some of those Refinements. There is a Refinement that I drew into. That's very good. But the question is, do I want to get rid of any of the cards in my hand? I'm going to go with no there and use Brainwave to knock out the Roaring Scream, going down to 3 prizes. So I'm in the lead. I have no 2 prize Pokemon on the board. Things are looking really good for me. Now, what I'll want to do is something similar to my play in Game 1 of this match, where I want to knock out the Guardi EX next turn, going down to 1 prize card, essentially checkmating them. We'll have to see, though, if they try to remove their Gardevoir EX from the board with something like Toro or Collapse Stadium. Actually, they're not playing Collapse Stadium in their list, so they won't be able to do that. They're playing the the Headquarters. Pokemon Headquarters, I believe it's called, that makes basic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 more in place of the Collapse Stadium, since they are playing the Professor Tauros scenario. So Moonglow Reverse, knocking out my Refinement Curlia. I do have Rare Candy in my hand though, so the Gardevoir EX play is definitely possible, and I already have 3 energy on this Gardevoir. I can also attach another one manually, so I can have plenty of energy to one-hit knock out the Gardevoir EX, I believe. I'm just going to need to get a couple more energies into the discard pile. So I have 2 basic energies in my hand, which I can get rid of with Ultra Ball or Zinnia's Resolve. I'm going to go Zinnia's Resolve. I find a Reversal Energy, which doesn't help me. So I would need 6 additional energies on my Gardevoir. And I might have 1 energy prized, which is the problem here. Because I have 4 basic energies on the board, and I have 3 in the discard pile. Ultra Ball away Guardi and... yeah, Ultra Ball away Guardi and Cresselia. And then Super Rod, Curlia, and Gardevoir back. So I'm not going to be able to go for the knockout on the Guardi EX this turn. I'm just going to stabilize my board, set up my deck to have good cards in it with that Super Rod. I have Radiant Greninja now, so I can draw extra cards with that if I want to next turn. Really just preparing for the Iono that my opponent will likely play. And still, after taking 4 prize cards, I have not benched a 2 prize Pokemon. Very, very important to keep that in mind. Now my opponent promoted this Guardi EX so that they can get that energy off of it. I would have to assume. So they can use Cresselia. If they Psychic Embrace 1 to Guardi, that puts the damage on that they need, and then They retreat into Cresselia, Moonglow Reverse again. That might be the play they're going for to take out my Refinement Curlia, so that I would have to use a rare candy if I want Guardi EX in play. I would just need a ton of cards if I want to get the knockout after an Iono. I think it would be near impossible to do that. So we're going to have to see, can the opponent Iono me here? If not, the game should be over. Fog Crystal. And no Iono, so I should be able to win right here with Boss KO their Guardi EX. 3 Psychics in the discard pile, so that means I have some work to do with getting energies into the discard. There's 1 in my deck. There are 4 on the board, so that means there are 2 basic Psychics prized. So I'm going to have to get rid of the energies, the 1 Psychic energy on my Gardevoir on the bench, I believe. So I do have the Collapse Stadium, which would allow me to discard that Gardevoir off the bench and get those energies into the discard pile, so that I could then Psychic Embrace them. So I'm going to evolve that Refinement Curlia, not go into the Guardi EX and give my opponent a win con, because I have identified now that I cannot win this turn. But what I can do is Boss's Orders, I think the Manaphy, and then also bench Screamtail. Or I could just Brainwave. Again, here I'm thinning my deck to, and also thinning cards I don't need anymore out of my hand, like those rare candies. Those were useless now because I evolved that Curlia. And now I can essentially win this game without ever putting down a 2-prize Pokemon, like I've been saying. So, Shining Arcana, draw the rest of the cards in my deck, and then I Iono. So just very, very effectively thinning my deck of the cards that are going to be useless for me. And then Brainwave, taking 1 more prize card, which I know both of my last prize cards are basic Psychic energies. So in this case, if they knock out my Curlia, I have the Gardevoir with energies. If they have if they knock out the Gardevoir with energies, that means they didn't knock out my Curlia, and that can just evolve into Gardevoir. So, once again here, I've checkmated the opponent into a situation where I don't think they have any good plays. And the opponent scoops, and I win the top 8 match 2-0. Going into my top 4 matchup against Fusion Strike Mew, my opponent won the coin flip, and they choose to go first. Okay, so for turn I draw into a Fog Crystal. That can be okay. I don't really have enough here because I need to get 2 Raltses down, but then I also want a Mirage Step next turn. But I also started with a Refinement Curlia in my hand, so things are definitely awkward. We don't want to see those refinements in our opening hand because we want them to be in our deck so that we can Mirage Step them onto the board. And yeah, that Ice Q is definitely threatening, so I think my only choice here is to just go Ultra Ball for another Ralts, and then I'll deal with the ramifications of that next turn when I no longer have the Ultra Ball, because it's very, very likely my opponent can either Boss KO my Ralts, or they can knock it out with Ice Q, or they can Escape Rope. So I have to put down another Ralts here, and then I'll just hold on to the energy. No reason to attach it prematurely. And the opponent uses Krabombinable, and they do flip the heads, which they definitely needed that heads because they weren't drawing many cards with their single Genesect. So if the Krabombinable did not go their way, that could have definitely changed things here. And they'll go ahead and snipe that, and let's see what I get. So just gonna have to be Refinement for 1 and see what I have. We get Iono, which could help. Okay, we get Fog Crystal, we get Counter Catcher, we have Ralts, so I'm going to Counter Catcher up that Genesect just to see if I can stall them a little bit, and then pass. They immediately have the double Turbo Energy for Genesect. They also have another Genesect to bench and a Crystal Cave to play down so they can draw a couple extra cards with their Genesect, and then they'll block Slider, knocking out my Refinement Curlia. Now I get the Manaphy, and it's just a pass from there. I attached this energy to Cresselia, which I definitely shouldn't have done, because then I'm punished if I top deck into something like a Zinnia's Resolve and need 2 energies or 2 cards in hand. So I think that energy attachment there was definitely signs of exhaustion from a long tournament, signs of frustration from a dead draw, and those are all things that can cause you to throw your games. So definitely things to watch out for, you know, trying to be as well rested as you can in a long tournament, but also trying not to let frustrations get the best of you. So they're going to go ahead and boss up my Ralts and block Slider, knocking it out because I do have that Manaphy stopping them from knocking it out while it's on the bench. And I actually do top deck Zinnia's Resolve there, like I said could happen, and just instantly scoop. Okay, now game 2, I am going first, and I have a pretty good start. I can search my deck, but I see that there's no Mirage Step in it. I've also prized a Refinement Curlia, so there are 2 Curlias in my prizes, and unfortunately one of them are the Mirage Step. So I have Candy in my hand already. Looks like it might just have to be a Candy game. My opponent has the Alessa Sparkle out of the Forest Seal Stone. They also have another Fusion Strike energy to attach, so they will be able to guarantee attacking with that Block Slider to knock out one of my 3 Ralts. And there's Block Slider for the KO on the active one with the energy. Makes sense. I have Candy in my hand, but I don't have a Guardy EX, which is likely what I would need here. I'm just going to go ahead and Candy and Iono, hoping for a reversal, so I can take a knockout here in response. I do hit the reversal. I also have Ralts, I have Ultra Ball, I have Artisan, I have Shining Arcana. Shining Arcana finds me an energy, but I don't want to attach it, actually. The level ball can get me Refinement Curlia. And then I'm going to Artisan prior to Refinement because it's for my last Ralts, or no Ralts actually, that's right, they did knock out one, I have 3 on the board, so Artisan for Screamtail and then Refinement after I thin the deck out of a basic Pokemon. And then I can take that knockout thanks to Rare Candy Shining Arcana plus the Reversal Energy off of the Iono. The opponent plays Judge, and it just is one of those games where I'm going to be having to work off of the very little amount of cards that I have and the very kind of unstable board setup that I have this game. The opponent retreats and uses Cross Fusion Strike Technoblast to KO my active Gardevoir. And I'm going to promote the Screamtail so I can try to start attacking with things that are not Gardevoir. I have this Mirage Step Curlia in my hand now, which is pretty awkward. I choose to use Boss's Orders to see if I can trap a Genesect up there, especially since they've already used their Forest Seal Stone. That means they're going to have to find me out naturally. And it kind of hurts to put this Gardevoir EX onto the Refinement Curlia, because then I have this Mirage Step Curlia, which can't do anything. So I'm actually going to knock out the Genesect V with my Gardevoir EX. Taking 2 prizes, and then I only need to knock out 1 Mew VMAX, but that might be easier said than done with this very, very weak board that I have of Gardevoir EX, a Mirage Step Curlia, and a Screamtail. I'll play Boss's Orders on that Curlia. Even though it's not a Refinement Curlia, they are aware that it can evolve into a Shining Arcana, and that is one of the Pokemon I could use to take a one-hit knockout on a Mew VMAX. Of course, I could also use a Screamtail. I'm going to need a lot of energy in my discard pile to make it happen, though. So, Ultra Ball away 2 Psychics. And I have 3 Psychics now in the discard. If I retreat, I'd have 5, so I could put 100 more damage onto the Screamtail, making it 120, which means I could snipe for 240. which is not going to be enough damage. I'm thinking about benching the Zacian almost as bait because I want the Screamtail to live. I'd rather they knock out my Zacian. So I'll Psychic Embrace those energies to Screamtail, bench Zacian V. And I'm thinking about this energy. It's just correct to not attach it anywhere. So I'll retreat my Gardevoir. No, I'll use Miracle Force. So that way, I preemptively attach these energies to Screamtail so that if they knock out my Gardevoir, I can just knock out the Mew VMAX on the bench after they retreat it with Screamtail. Because if I didn't attach those energies preemptively and they knock out Gardevoir, I do nothing, right? But because I Psychic Embraced first, I forced them to have the boss to KO the Screamtail. So I promote Gardevoir EX. And here I'm just hoping they don't have that final boss to knock out the Zacian V. They have a big hand, so they can't really do much with Genesect unless they can thin that hand down. They do have Ultra Ball to thin the hand down. They grab Genesect V, attach Double Turbo, play Power Tablet, so if they have a Gust or an Escape Rope, my Zacian V will be KO'd. Krabombinable would end the game here, but it's Tails. Those Krabomatics are so crazy that they just have the power to flip a coin and maybe win the game with the best card in your deck. So they draw a Fusion Strike, they don't find anything, they just hit me, and I find the Counter Catcher off the top of my deck to swing for the last 3 prizes and win Game 2 of the top 4 match. In Game 3, I start Zacian, which is not a very good starter. My opponent, of course, wants to go first, so I will have to go second and just get some sort of setup here. Hopefully, I did prize a Refinement Curlia. My luck was not great in this top 4 match between the way I'm drawing and my starting Pokemon and my prizes. The Zacian V does have 2 retreats, so I'm going to just have to go ahead and attach to that. And then I can Roar of the Sword to either it or the Ralts. But I couldn't find another Pokemon, I couldn't find another Ralts or another basic Pokemon in general there. And they have the Forest Seal Stone, so we just know this Ralts is going down. From there, I do try to stay in the game, but the next turn my opponent can just get this Ice Cube down. That way, they'll either boss knock out my Ralts that I bench again, or they'll just block slider it. And essentially, I'm just never going to be able to stabilize a board. They still haven't used Forest Seal Stone, so there's really no hope here. Like, this Ralts is not surviving. There's the Forest Seal Stone. Now they actually used it to get the Genesect out of the active, and the Ralts does survive, contrary to what I said, but Worker just doesn't find me still. No more basic Pokemon, no Level Ball, no Fog Crystal, Ultra Ball, Artisan, nothing like that. Refinement, there's the Artisan I mentioned. I'm trying to find a win condition here, something that would allow me to maybe, if something good happens next turn, maybe trying to trap Genesect, thinking of all the possible win conditions here, but Echoing Horn the Zacian, and I just scoop. In the end, I placed 4th out of over 300 players, losing in the end to Fusion Strike Mew VMAX, which went on to win the event. My main takeaway from the event was that Zacian V is now borderline useless with 3 Arcanas and Screamtail, with the addition of Luxurious Cape to turn either one of these single prizers into an even better version of Zacian V in most cases. So I cut Zacian V for Avery, which can limit the opponent's bench and pair well with Screamtail or Counter Catcher to even further demolish the opponent's board state. Between the late night on Wednesday and the online regionals I would play Saturday, this was the only change I made to the deck list. Saturday's Tournament of Doom online regionals was not for the weak, as the first phase consisted of 10 one-hour best-of-3 rounds, meaning to even get to top cut I would need a record of 8 wins and 2 losses or better across roughly 10 hours of playing Pokemon cards. The first 3 rounds were textbook, going through a suboptimally built Chi and Palbec's Caliber deck and 2 Roaring Moon decks, which are a really good matchup for Gardevoir EX. In round 4, I tied a Gardevoir mirror match, which is often how this one will go, since the games take really long and a game 3 is very hard to finish, even with an hour to play the match. Round 5, I was paired against Fusion Strike Mew, which is the deck that beat me in top 4 of the late night a few days prior. I happily beat it and moved on to a 4-0-1 record, meaning I was technically undefeated, but watching out for the amount of ties I accrued was crucial since a win is worth 3 match points, but a tie is only worth 1 match point. In round 6, I tied another Gardevoir EX mirror, and then was paired against Snorlax Stall twice in a row. Let's watch how game 1 of round 6 versus Snorlax Control went. Game 1 against Control, I start with Cresselia as my only starting Pokemon. Against most matchups, this would be like an awful start, 0 Ralts available, but against Control, it's pretty fine because it's not like they're going to be KOing my Pokemon. I would have preferred a Ralts so that I can just build like a solo Gardevoir in the active, but the Cresselia can do 110 damage at a time, so it'll be two-shotting Snorlaxes regardless if they have the Bravery Charm or not. So this is pretty fine. The important cards for this matchup are going to be Professor Toro's Scenario, Boss's Orders, and the Pal Pad to get back Professor Toro and Boss. Other than that, I'm just going to be swinging into their active with Cresselia or Shining Arcana Gardevoir for the whole game, trying to take 6 prizes before they can mill my deck. It's also going to be important to think about Ultra Balling away any basic Pokemon that I get into my hand so they can't Erika's them onto the board and then into the active, but I'm also going to want to Super Rod those Pokemon back into the deck after I Ultra Ball them out of my hand because of Echoing Horn. So, basic Pokemon are dangerous if they're in my hand and if they're in my discard pile. The only place they're safe is in my deck. And I have this Cresselia just swinging Lunar Blast every turn right now. I'm going to wait to evolve that Ralts until I really need to. Taking my time preserving resources is kind of the name of the game against Control. The only way they can get rid of my Professor Toros and Boss's Orders is, well, they can't. But they can get rid of my Pal Pad with Misfortune Sisters. So it would be great if I could draw into the Pal Pad sooner than later, just so it's safe in my hand. And yeah, like I said, I'm just playing it slow, playing the waiting game here, letting them trap this Ralts in the active. If they start pressuring me with things like the Misfortune Sisters, then maybe I go and get a Kirlia. But now that that Ralts is in my hand, is a perfect time to get the Kirlia because I can get rid of the Ralts. I actually don't get rid of the Ralts though, which was a misplay looking back at this now. But maybe I just refinement it away. Yep, there we go. So it doesn't matter. I get rid of it with the refinement. That is exactly what I should do. And now I can start powering up this Kirlia. I can consider Super Rodding, but the opponent only plays one Echoing Horn, so it's typically going to be more likely to see an Erika's than it is to see an Echoing Horn. They Misfortune Sisters. The most important part is that they don't hit my Pal Pad. That's really the only thing I'm worried about. I guess Super Rod, I also don't want to lose a Super Rod, but Pal Pad's the biggest deal. So if I get Shining Arcana into an energy, I would get to start attacking here. Unfortunately, I don't. And here I'm probably, yeah, I want to get rid of that Scream Tail again so it doesn't get Erika'd out of my hand and into the active position. And here I can Super Rod so they don't get Echoing Horned. Now that I'm getting a little more value out of the Super Rod, it's a good time to do that. It's also making my deck a little bigger. We lose 2 Fog Crystals there. It looks like the lack of a game log on PTCG Live definitely makes it confusing to track what you're losing with something like Misfortune Sisters. And here I just need an energy for my Gardevoir so I can start pressuring them. Unfortunately, I do draw into 2 basic Pokemon that could be Erica'd out of my hand, but I also have the Professor Toro scenario in my hand now. That's going to be very, very important in this matchup, like I said, because it just lets me pick up a Pokemon. And as long as I can get my Palpad into my hand where it will be safe, I can then recycle that Professor Tauros. The best case scenario would be if I can recycle the Tauros and the boss's orders all at the same time. The boss's orders is so important because that Snorlax is what says that I can't retreat. So if I boss up something like a Rotom, I can retreat and take a 2-prize KO. Now I have 5 energy on my Gardevoir, swinging 210 damage at a time. And I Iono'd a couple of basic Pokemon to the bottom of my deck. Of course, Professor Tauros was also there, but I think it was worth it to Iono those away so it couldn't get Erica'd. Now the opponent is going to boss up my Cresselia, but it's not the end of the world because my Cresselia can attack. Although here what I'm going to do is boss's orders that Rotom to take 2 prizes, and I really can start putting on the pressure here, going down to 3 prize cards. And just notice how much I'm limiting my bench. There's no reason to really set anything up in this matchup because there's no threats of knockouts. And even if they were playing energies for things like maybe the Mimikyu or they have another attacker, it's all going to be like shown kind of ahead of time if they are setting up something that can attack, so it's not too much of a worry. I do have to attach to this Cresselia again since I had retreated it, and unfortunately the Snorlax lives with just 10 HP there, and so they'll just penny that up. Like I said, I'm hoping to find Palpad. I'm hoping to draw into Tauros as well, and I can kind of draw a lot of cards and have a big hand and then Iono it all back. So even if I draw my deck to a low size, I'm pretty safe to do so. Now this is a problem because they Erica'd my Memory Skip Ralts specifically, and Memory Skip Ralts is the worst one to have in the active because the teleportation burst can just switch itself out. So because of this was a reason that I identified that Memory Skip Ralts needs to be taken out of the deck, actually. And it should just be 4 teleportation bursts for the current metagame, I believe. So I just evolved that Ralts into a Kirlia, and we're going to be setting that up as a potential attacker. And if I can find Professor Tauros, I could get that Gardevoir out of the active. There is the Palpad now. So after I play the Tauros, once I find it, I can then Palpad boss and Tauros back into the deck. And that would just essentially end the game, because I'll have, if I use the Tauros, I'll take a knockout, and then I Palpad Tauros and boss, which both typically will get me a knockout when I use them. So, yeah, it should be all but sealed here as long as I can, yeah, just draw into that Tauros and my hand doesn't get disrupted. But I think because the Palpad is safely in my hand now, I should be good to go. So just trying to see that Professor Tauros scenario. Still don't see it there. Just taking a quick look at my discard pile, making sure that I don't want to Super Rod yet. And I'm thinking about using Iono. Iono will guarantee that I have the Tauros in my hand for next turn, although it does toss away my Palpad. So the Palpad is towards the bottom of the deck, but I believe I only had a 5-card deck there, so the top 2 are the only cards that could be guaranteed to not be Iono. I'm sorry, to not be Palpad. But I do have the Professor Tauros in my hand now, so that means I can easily take a KO next turn, go down to 2 prizes. So I'll pick up this Gardevoir that's in the active. It's kind of stuck up there with that reversal energy. Alright, so here I'm going to draw cards with Arcana because I definitely want to see if I can find that Pal Pad. I'm going to use the Professor Toro scenario, even though I know I now have these Ralts in my hand and they can Erika's the Ralts, or they can Counter Catcher the Cresselia. They also have the Rotom on the board again, so if I find that Pal Pad, that means Boss's Orders wins the game. So I'm just really hoping that they don't Misfortune Sisters my Pal Pad away in this scenario. They have the Ericas, they bring the Memory Skip back up. Like I said, the Memory Skip is a big problem to have in the deck in this matchup because it's just a liability. It can't get itself out of the active like the Teleportation Burst Ralts can. And there is the Pal Pad, and the game is essentially over at that point. So I Pal Pad the boss and the Tauros back into the deck. And now I can just wait to draw into them. I'm considering, do I want to attach to this Ralts, but I'll just Worker, draw some cards. If I find the boss, that's just game on the Rotom, but they did just penny it up. So now I will need the boss on the Mimikyu plus the Tauros. So there's boss. That's perfect. I can boss the Mimikyu, retreat this Ralts, and then if they bring it back up, I can Tauros it, because I know I have Toro in the deck. They don't have anything to remove the Toro, so I think the game is now secured. Especially also because I have that energy attachment to the Ralts to remove it. Or to retreat it, I should say. And yeah, with Tauros in the deck, it doesn't really matter what they do. I'll just draw into Tauros next turn. So, take a knockout on the Mimikyu. I go down to 1 prize. They can Erika's whatever they want. But I just have the Tauros waiting in my deck of 8 cards. And I can draw my top deck. And then I can Ultra Ball for Pokemon. And then I can Refinement, Shining Arcana, guarantee drawing my entire deck. So yeah, here we go. Ultra Ball, get the Manaphy. There's 6 cards left in my deck, and I can draw all 6 of them. There's the Tauros, pick that up, and we take the final KO. My opponent ended up scooping the match during Game 2, and I took a much needed break after almost 6 hours of Pokemon, so I got some food and got ready for my next match against Control, which I ended up winning in a Game 3. A combination of Professor Tauros to pick up trapped Pokemon, Boss's Orders to bring up a Pokemon that isn't Snorlax, and Pal Pad to retrieve those supporters allowed me to take control in these matchups, pun intended. I accepted an intentional draw in round 10 and went into top cut with an undefeated record of 7-0-3, which was good enough to place me as the 6th seed going into top 8. In top 8, I faced the Lugia player who I ID'd with in round 10, and long story short, we both drew horrendously throughout the set, and in game 3 my opponent's exhaustion and nerves set in, and they made a major misplay, allowing me to take a game that was all but lost. Moving on to top 4, I would play against a Gardevoir EX mirror match. I was lucky enough to win the coin flip for game 1 of the mirror match here, and I have a pretty good starting hand as well. We'll see that I prized 0 of my Curlias, but I do have 1 Refinement Curlia in my hand, which can definitely mess up the Mirage Step. Although I do have Iono in my hand, so I could consider Ultra Ball for Mirage Step and then Iono to see if I can put this Curlia at the bottom of the deck and then not draw into any additional Curlias, so I can Mirage Step the full 3 onto my bench. The opponent battle passes for 2 Ralts and level balls for a 3rd with an attachment to the Radiant Greninja, and they're going to play the Iono. Now this new hand does not give me any outs to Mirage Step. We'll have to see what my top deck is, otherwise I'll just be playing an Iono. Yeah, so we'll just be playing Iono here. And I do hit the level ball, perfect. So that Refinement Curlia is now at the bottom, all 3 are in the deck. Very good. And I'll attach this extra energy to the active because I can evolve it into Shining Arcana next turn and attack with just a manual attachment, not needing to hit any energies off of the Shining Arcana ability, and then Brainwave can do 150 without evolving into like a Gardevoir EX or any other form of energy acceleration. So that attachment to the active is really important to have. So it looks like the opponent will just be going for a Mirage Step of their own. They do have one Refinement Curlia in the hand, so they're going to evolve that onto the bench. And they're also going to draw with Worker, so they are risking drawing into more refinements, which I definitely don't like playing all those cards there, but they did not get unlucky with drawing into refinements, and they Mirage Step 2, so we both have very similar setups here. We both have triple refinement, we both have a Mirage Step in the active. They just have that Greninja on the bench, which could just end up taking up space for them. But it's also an easy discard if I play down my Avery. Now I have Ultra Ball in my hand to guarantee the refinement, to guarantee the Shining Arcana Guardy. But I also have the Reversal Energy, which could be a fine attachment as well for Shining Arcana. But I also get to... so I'm actually going to take this route instead, because Shining Arcana Guardy would hit the active for Brainwave. But since my opponent doesn't have a Manaphy down, I could just retreat into Roaring Scream and start taking out my opponent's Refinement Curlias. The Refinement Curlias are pretty much the backbone of the deck, so this is really nice that I'm able to take out that with the Screamtail so easily. The Screamtail is just such an efficient attacker. It's very low resource to attack with it. It just has to come with the prerequisite that my opponent doesn't have a Manaphy on the bench, and in this case they didn't, so the Roaring Scream is a fantastic choice here. The opponent would probably like to have a counter catcher here to counter catcher Brainwave, a Curlia Refinement. So they have Avery, which is pretty good, but I could just remove my Gardevoir EX and my Ralts. If they pair that with a counter catcher, they'll still be taking out a Curlia. But then at the end of the day, I have this Screamtail, so if they go around my Screamtail, I just have this attacker ready to knock out their only Refinement Curlia on the board. Yeah, so there's counter catcher. So they get to Brainwave into my Curlia. Like I said, I think this is pretty fine. They did have a pretty strong turn with Avery plus counter catcher and knockout, but with my hand and with my Screamtail available, I don't really care about it too much. You'll also notice my decision was very quick to discard the Ralts and Gardevoir with when they Avery'd, because I had already thought about what I would get rid of if they play Avery. Play a couple refinements, put Ralts down, evolve into Shining Arcana. We can get an energy on the board there with the Shining Arcana. And then the opponent still doesn't have Manaphy, so just an easy Roaring Scream to KO a Refinement Curlia. So the opponent is going to play Super Rod to get back a Ralts and a Curlia. Probably a premature Super Rod. I feel like maybe they could have waited for some more things to be KO'd. And they Palpad Iono Worker back there. Definitely a misplay. They should have Palpaded back Avery. I don't see why they would ever Palpad Worker over Avery, so really crucial mistake there, because the Avery could hurt me a lot, whereas Worker is not really going to do anything. Here we see Counter Catcher again, bringing up the Gardevoir, Shining Arcana with an energy, and they Iono me, but all they're doing here is allowing me to not evolve into Gardevoir EX, not present them with a 2-prizer, because I get to keep this Screamtail alive. Now I have Avery, so they'll remove the Manaphy and a Gardevoir line. And with the Manaphy gone, I can now Roaring Scream their Refinement Curlia. So I feel very in control of this game, and I feel like I'm playing the mirror match better than my opponent is. And the mirror match is very, very skill-based, regardless of who wins the coin flip. The better player's probably going to win, regardless who went first or second, so long as both players get a decent enough setup, which I think we both got decent enough setups in this game. So yeah, I'll just Roaring Scream the Refinement Curlia like I've been doing. Taking my knockouts. This Screamtail is getting an insane amount of value, partially because of the way my opponent's playing, partially just because the card is very good. So there's the worker. Imagine if that was Avery. I would have to decide between getting rid of a Gardevoir, a Manaphy, or a Curlia. There's Super Rod for more Ralts and Curlias. They're going to Ultra Ball, probably for Ralts. Yep, there's Ultra Ball for Ralts. And then on my next turn, I'll probably want to try to boss KO their Gardevoir EX, going down to 1 prize, essentially guaranteeing the win for the following turn. So they Psychic embraced a bunch of energies to the Gardevoir, probably in preparation of me maybe knocking out their Gardevoir EX. I imagine that might be what they're thinking here. And I have, it looks like 6 Psychic energies in there. I'm going to need to draw into a couple more Psychics to discard to be able to take this knockout on Gardevoir EX. Maybe I don't. Maybe I already have enough energies in the discard and I missed that. Okay, yeah, it looks like I have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, I have 8 in there. 9 total is what gets the knockout. And the Luxurious Cape allows me to put all of these energies onto the Gardevoir. Because of the Psychic Embrace, there's a kind of a cap to how many energies you can attach to a 140 HP Pokemon, but Luxurious Cape takes care of that. And I can Super Rod back a couple important Pokemon. The Screamtail kind of helps me never have a lose condition next turn. So there I Brainwave for KO, going down to 1 prize card, and leaving my opponent with really not many options. Because this is open deck list, I know that my opponent is not playing Lost Vacuum, which allowed me to make this kind of play. My opponent should probably just scoop here, because I have a win condition on the board no matter what they do. If they knock out my active, I knock out their active with Gardevoir EX or with Screamtail, or I can pretty much do anything. So yeah, Psychic Embrace, Boss's orders my Gardevoir EX. Oh, okay, so yeah, they go for the trap, the Gardevoir, so I can't Psychic Embrace to it to retreat, but I have the Professor Tauros scenario in my hand. GG. Okay, game 2 of the top 4 match versus Gardevoir here, and my opponent will, of course, choose to go first in game 2. They have a Ralts with an energy, Jirachi in the active. Fine setup for turn 1 in the mirror, because they know I'm not threatening a KO on anything. Now I take a quick look and see that my Mirage Step is prized here. So I'll probably be looking for either setting up multiple Ralts or looking for a rare candy turn 2 kind of play. So yeah, so I'm gonna have 3 Ralts to start this off. That probably tells my opponent that I prized Mirage Step. If I saw something like this, I'd imagine the opponent either has a lot of Curlias in their hand, or they prized Mirage Step. So there's Iono. This is a really good draw because I have Ultra Ball and Rare Candy off of that Iono. So I have the turn 2 candy ready to go if I want to take that route. Benching the Greninja is interesting. Maybe they prized Refinement. Oh, actually, they only Mirage Step for 1 Refinement Curlia. So either their prizes or their hand is very unfortunate. So yeah, they have Jirachi on the bench. That's what they started with, so they would have definitely preferred to have started with Manaphy in this case. So my Scream Tail can just knock out that Curlia. Gonna go ahead and grab that Guardi EX, of course. The Scream Tail only needs 2 energies Psychic Embrace to it to knock out the Curlia. It's just, again, so efficient of an attacker. I have my refinements being set up. My board is looking beautiful, and my opponent's board is looking unfortunate. I even got that Manaphy to protect from my opponent's Scream Tail if they decide to use it. And yeah, Roaring Scream knocking out their only Refinement Curlia on the board. So my opponent really never recovered from their poor setup, and I'm able to just kind of take the game away. I'm already at 4 to 5 prizes at this point, and now I can go up to 3 to 5 prize card difference. So my opponent should see pretty soon that this game is out of reach. I also have Avery here, which would force them to make some very tough decisions. So let's see what they choose to get rid of here with the Avery. So they get rid of the Manaphy and Jirachi. That just means that I can now snipe their bench with Scream Tail again. So I'm going to Super Rod, that's Scream Tail, and the Cresselia back, both being options for me. And I can just easily level ball for the Scream Tail, start taking out that Refinement Curlia yet again, and the opponent scoops, which makes a lot of sense.
If you told me this Cilios was going to come in to another online tournament and just win his way through, I was said, okay, maybe.
Let's get into this finals match. We are going to see Lost Box with a 1-1 Lycanroc VMAX tech going up against Gardevoir with no Battle VIP pass. What? What a finals!
Oh, what he's finals? Undefeated. He's undefeated. No VIP pass, and he is still able to win.
We're now into the finals against Lost Zone Box playing the 1-1 Lycanroc VMAX, which likely doesn't come into play in the Gardevoir EX matchup. The opponent is choosing to go first, and they have a Sable start, which isn't great. They do have a Battle VIP pass and a Nest Ball, so they can start getting some Pokemon onto the bench, like Radiant Greninja and Comfey. But they don't have any energy, and they don't have any switch outs, so 0 cards in the Lost Zone for them on turn 1 is really good for me. And then I'm going to Ultra Ball because I want another Pokemon that can't be knocked out by Cramorant. So now I have Cresselia in the active, I have Radiant Greninja on the bench. And I should be pretty impervious to anything they can do next turn, especially since they didn't bench enough, especially since they didn't get anything into the Lost Zone. Now, I did prize one Refinement Curlia, but it looks like here I'm going to go for manually evolving my Curlias instead of using Mirage Step. Especially because of, you know, I want to have Cresselia, Radiant Greninja, not be giving up easy prizes. Mirage Step is a very easy prize in the active position. And the opponent also had a very slow turn 1, which allows me to a little more comfortably take this slower approach to the game. So I'll just bench that Ralts and then pass it over. I have a very, very ideal board state. Triple Ralts, Greninja, Cresselia, Manaphy has been the ideal versus Lost Zone ever since. We see there also they're playing the Terrakion that swings for 120 and then can't be hit next turn. So a couple interesting cards they include because of their build, including fighting energy for things like that Terrakion and the Lycanroc VMAX, as I previously mentioned. But none of the fighting energy cards should really matter in this matchup. So I do draw into the Curlia Mirage Step there. The opponent has 3 cards in the Lost Zone. Still a very slow game for my opponent so far. And I only have 1 rare candy in the deck, but that's really what I'm looking for here. Rare candy would be awesome, so I can start attacking. But even in the case of no rare candy, the opponent is not doing too much too soon. So we'll go ahead and Iono. Still no rare candy, but I always have these Ultra Balls around because I'm playing 4 in the deck. Got another Refinement Curlia to put down. And we do find the rare candy, which is awesome. So I'll be able to start taking knockouts with Moonglow Reverse this turn. Really thinning out the deck, drawing through the deck in an effective sequence of events. Iono before all of the refinements I think was key there. Putting a lot of cards to the bottom of the deck. And making the rare candy more likely to see. So we did get into the rare candy, which is great. And I knock out just a Comfey. I think that's the most important card to knock out since they still need to get a lot of cards into the Lost Zone. The opponent plays Escape Rope, and that's what we keep this Radiant Greninja around for. Because now they could Escape Rope into Crimorant and spit into the Greninja, and it does not take a knockout, just like it wouldn't take a knockout on the Cresselia. So they're going to switch into the Lumineon, actually, and swing with the Aqua Return for 120. Of course, still not knocking out my Radiant Greninja. So my ideal supporter for this turn would be Professor Tauros, so I'm not going to Iono before the refinements, just to see if I can get into my ideal supporter for turn, which I definitely think is worth. And I have a very strong setup here, a lot of Pokemon that are out of range of their attacks. We have Double Shining Arcana Gardevoir, I have Gardevoir EX. I don't find the Toro, but I don't want to give my opponent a bigger hand, so I'm just going to play Avery. They can discard probably Radiant Greninja or Sableye right now. Yeah, they just discard Sableye since they're probably not getting into it just yet. And they can always just have another Sableye with Artisan as well. So I'm going to make Moonglow Reverse happen here again. No Toro and no Collapse Stadium to get that Radiant Greninja off of the board. The Luxurious Cape is also an interesting option here. I could attach it to the Manaphy to put the Manaphy way out of range of a Lost Mine. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do there. It does make it worth an extra prize card, but only if knocked out by damage. So if they were to knock out the 170 HP Manaphy with Lost Mine, they wouldn't take an extra prize card for it. So I really like this play of Luxurious Cape to the Manaphy. There's the Sableye again, so they'll bench Sableye and Mirage Gate to it. Escape Rope. I know they're Lost Mining, probably cleaning up my Radiant Greninja and then setting damage on Manaphy. So I'll just send up this Gardevoir. So yeah, they put 90 on the Manaphy, and they put enough on the Greninja to take the knockout there. So that's their first knockout of the game, going to 5 prizes while I'm at 4. And I can just Professor Tauros that Manaphy up. Of course, discarding the Luxurious Cape, but I essentially wasted my opponent's Lost Mine, which was the goal. And then I have Palpad to just bring back Boss's Orders and Professor Tauros scenario. And I have a really, really stable board. Not a lot they want to knock out. The Cresselia is the Lost Mine target if they establish another Sableye. But there's nothing else they can KO with Greninja, or Cramorant, or Sableye other than just the Cresselia. So yeah, they're just going to spit 110 into the Gardevoir. And I think I can just guarantee drawing into the Tauros here. Let's see. I would need one more way to draw, which I don't have. So I could bench a couple Pokemon, collapse away this damaged Gardevoir. I could Iono and guarantee the Toro for next turn. There are a lot of possible plays here. But I definitely don't want to put down more small Pokemon. Like, I don't think it would be beneficial to bench Manaphy in this case. And I can Moonglow Reverse, though, healing this Gardevoir a little bit, making it harder for them to KO. Of course, they can still reach it with the Lost Mine, but they'll be able to spread less damage elsewhere now if I Moonglow Reverse 20 off of the Gardevoir. And in this case, I can also take out their Comfey with an energy, which could be helpful for them to bring up and then retreat. So definitely want to knock that out as opposed to something like the Cramorant or the Comfey without energy. But the major misplay I made here is in an open deck list environment, I saw that my opponent is playing Krabombinable V, which can mill the top 2 cards of my deck. And I played myself down to a 2-card deck, and I could have Super Rotted or Iono'd or anything to fill the deck back up. Now, fortunately for me, my opponent does not have the combination of Krabombinable V and a Switching Out and a Water Energy all at the same time to mill the top 2 cards of my deck and win the game out of nowhere is what they could do. But I completely forgot about the Krabombinable V because they had so much wacky stuff in their deck list. They had the Lycanroc VMAX and Lycanroc V, the Terrakion, they have Lumineon V, they have the Hawlucha. There was a lot to keep track of in this deck list, so yeah, I completely just omitted the Krabombinable V in my overview of their deck list. Fortunately enough, they weren't able to make it happen, but that would have been a crazy comeback win for them if I had overlooked the Krabombinable V, playing myself down the 2 cards and got punished for it. Okay, game 2 of the finals, and my opponent starts with Hawlucha Energy Pass. That's what you want to see after over 13 hours of playing Pokemon TCG online in the Tournament of Doom Online Regionals, and I felt very good that I would be taking first place undefeated after seeing my opponent open with this Hawlucha Energy Pass. So I have a pretty decent board of double Ralts Manaphy, and I'll just pass after that. My opponent does have Colress's Experiment, which they love to see that, so hopefully that can help them get into the game, but those Battle VIP passes aren't going to help now, and all they have is a Manaphy pass. So I could go for an aggressive route with the Ultra Ball. Definitely what I'm thinking about here, but it's going to be better to just go for Mirage Step so long as it's in the deck. And identifying I don't need that Iono this turn. I need that energy to retreat the Manaphy. I'll probably want Ultra Ball next turn. Boss's orders could also help, so yeah, I'll just Mirage Step, get the whole gang on the board. 4 Kirlias, and my opponent is struggling to do much of anything. So they do find their first Comfey of the game, and they'll retreat into it to Flower Select. Ultra Ball for Lumineon for Colress's Experiment. And it looks like it might have been just because they want to put down that Forest Seal Stone for the Cramorant Escape Rope. I'll just send up Ralts. Very easy send up. And they will take the first KO of the game. But my board state is just incredible. And I think I'll definitely be looking for an opportunity to KO that Lumineon. No, I'm going to Iono here. So there could have been an opportunity to KO the Lumineon with Guard EX. But was it necessary? No. So I probably made the right call there. Just going for a more stable setup instead of chasing down the 2 prize with Lumineon V, because I know they'll have to attack with Aqua Return if they really want to get it out of there. And this way, I can take out their only Comfey, which is definitely so much better. Leaving the Cramorant in the active, which I know can't knock out my Cresselia, so yeah, giving myself a really stable board setup here. Pal padding in double Iono. I have Professor Tauros in my hand, so if they spit into the Cresselia, I can just Toro it up and deny them a prize card. They bench Comfey, so they do have another Comfey. They also have Switch Cart for it. Nest Ball for Radiant Greninja, and then they are just going to spit into the Cresselia. Now I have this Professor Tauros to pick up the Cresselia, which would be perfect. Use a couple of refinements. Building up my hand. Professor Tauros up the Cresselia. Sending out specifically the Gardevoir EX so that I can accelerate an energy to it, then retreat those energies into the discard pile, so that I can Moonglow Reverse all over again. And I'll just be taking out that Comfey, their only Comfey on the board. Also, meanwhile, I'm powering up both of these Kirlias to potentially use the Shining Arcana Gardevoir on top of them. And I'm considering luxury caping the Manaphy, but I'm going to pass on it for now. Moonglow Reverse the Comfey. Take another knockout going ahead on prizes. Denying that prize card last turn was huge, and my opponent is only able to use Spit Innocently into the Cresselia. And speaking of denying prize cards, I can do it all over again with this Collapsed Stadium. I just have to find out the right sequence to do it in, because I do have to retreat this Cresselia onto the bench in order to do that. So I'm going to have to first identify which Pokemon am I attacking with. Now, I don't have any Shining Arcanas in my hand, but I do play 3 in the deck. So I could just feel very confident about attacking with a Shining Arcana here, going for this play to secure the denial of the prize card, and I think it is a safe assumption that I could draw into either an Ultra Ball or Shining Arcana Gardevoir off of the Iono for 4. So I'm going to attach to the Mirage Step, retreat, and it's important that I do this before the Iono because the Collapsed Stadium is in my hand. So I'll collapse away that Cress, Iono, and I get 4 cards, and one of them is the Gardevoir Shining Arcana with the Brainwave attack. So I Brainwave for 150, denying another prize card, and now with the prize lead being 3-5, I'm very confident that I just win the game from here. Mirage Gate onto the Lumineon V, so they're going to go for Aqua Return, but very weak board for them. I'm going to go up to 2-5 prizes in the trade. I can just knock out the Radiant Greninja because it's the only useful Pokemon on their board. It just keeps getting worse and worse for them. I'm going to evolve all these Pokemon, so I have a very, very bulky board. And then Brainwave Knockout going down to just 2 prize cards left. My opponent at 5, I see no real way for them to win unless I forget about the Krabombinable V again. I'm at 7 prize cards, so Krabombinable V. I'm sorry, I'm at 7 cards in my deck, 2 prize cards, of course. So the Krabombinable V wouldn't quite do it yet, only milling 2 cards with that first attack. There is the Krabombinable. So maybe they try to trap something and use the Krabombinable to mill. Yeah, so they'll escape rope. They play Mirage Gate, getting a fighting to the active, a water to the Krabombinable. So it does look like they'll be trying to start milling my deck, maybe? They're really just struggling to find a win condition here in a world where I don't think they have a win condition. Mirage Gating multiple energies onto the Hawlucha. And they're just going to wing attack for 70, but if I can find a boss's orders, I could just knock out their Krabombinable V, but I see that there's really nothing else I need to do, and I'm just going to knock out their Hawlucha. And I have energy in my hand, so this will not matter. The boss Manaphy hoping to get it stuck in the active, but of course that's not going to be the case. So I just need to make sure I have enough energy to knock out this Krabombinable. And I do. I have just enough room on this Gardevoir actually to attach enough energy to knock out the Crab. Because I need 6 energy, so it goes up to 10 HP left, and then Brainwave will take the KO. After more than 13 hours of playing Pokemon TCG Live, I won the Tournament of Doom Online Regionals. I was really proud of my performance, even though it was just an online tournament. If you want to find tournaments like this to play in, check out play.limitlesstcg.com for plenty of opportunities to compete. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.